Chapter 1. In a golden desert, a whirlwind blew, and golden sand filled the air. The sand danced leisurely in this world. The scorching sun shone on the desert, making it look like a land cast in gold. It was quite dazzling, and the heat was dense. Even the space had some slight dislocations under this high temperature. The wilderness was quiet, and the world was silent. The world suddenly darkened, and the golden light converged. The cyclone condensed at the top of the sand dune, like a yellow typhoon. Patches of dark clouds inexplicably appeared above the sand dune, as if the dark clouds were about to destroy the city. If it was in other places, it might not be a big deal. But this was a boundless desert, and even the oases were pitifully few. There were not even 2 drops of rain in a year. Why was there suddenly a bolt from the blue? A faint green light flickered in the dark clouds, accompanied by a few silver dragons wandering in the clouds. From time to time, low muffled thunder could be heard. After a long while, a huge hole suddenly appeared in the middle of the dark clouds that covered the sky. In the center of the darkness, a green light danced along with a silver dragon. Huge lightning bolts constantly fell on the desert, blasting out sand pits and splashing up a lot of dust. Suddenly, a huge green pillar of light pierced through the heavens and earth. Vast amounts of energy surged like a shock wave, spreading out from the clouds with extreme speed. The surrounding space completely collapsed, and a pit dozens of meters deep was opened up in the desert below. It was like a basin, and the green pillar of light pierced straight into the sky. It was clearly visible for thousands of miles. The green light beam dyed the surrounding world with a faint green color, alternating with gold to create a magnificent scenery. At the same time, the surrounding dark clouds collapsed in an instant, leaving behind a huge green light beam. A moment later, the light beam flickered and slowly dimmed. And at the moment when the green light beam dimmed, a black figure slowly floated down from the light beam. When it landed properly on the sand dune, the green light beam flickered and disappeared. After the light beam disappeared, the sky was full of sunlight again. It was still a golden desert. The wind and sand blown by the hot wind covered everything that had just happened. It seemed that no one had noticed what had just happened, except for a small sandbag on the sand dune below. The sky was slowly dyed dark, and the icy blue moon slowly climbed up from the horizon. At this moment, the slightly bulging sandbag on the sand dune trembled. A slender and fair arm slowly stretched out from the sandbag, followed by a second arm. With both hands on the sand, a black shadow sat up. Fine golden sand slid down from his soft long hair, and his black windbreaker was stained with sand. The cold moonlight shone on a fair and handsome face, even a little feminine. It was a boy of 14 or 15 years old. If one didn't look carefully, one would think that he was a girl. He was the kind of existence that would attract attention no matter where he went. Where is this place? Why am I here? The boy muttered to himself, his face full of confusion. Who am I? Why can't I remember anything? Looking at the sand dunes in the distance, a towering ancient tree suddenly flashed in his mind. A vague voice lightly reverberated in his mind. Brother, home! Come back, home! The boy was puzzled. Yes, I have to go back. I want to go home. Someone is waiting for me. Standing up from the sand pile with difficulty, the purplish-black greatsword silently slid down the windbreaker and sank deep into the sand. The boy squatted down and looked at the greatsword in confusion. After a long while, he picked it up and hugged it in his arms. He lifted his feet and walked forward unsteadily. Standing on the top of the sand dune, the boy looked at the desert world in a daze. The icy blue moonlight shone on his eyes that were getting more and more unfocused. He lifted his feet in a daze, but he missed a step and slid down the sand slope to the bottom of the sand dune, kicking up a cloud of dust. Taking a breath of the gradually cold air, the boy looked at the blurry sand dune and used his hands and feet to cut open the sand in front of him. Like a worm, he slowly crawled forward, leaving a long trail on the sand. I have to go back. Someone who is waiting for me. I have to go back, the boy kept muttering to himself. His fingernails were filled with sand, and his unkempt appearance was very embarrassing. After crawling for dozens of meters with difficulty, he finally dropped his outstretched hand, and his eyelids closed uncontrollably. Before his consciousness dissipated, there seemed to be a call from afar. When he woke up again, it was due to a violent jolt. The bones in his body made sounds that were on the verge of falling apart, and there was a tearing pain in his head. The boy struggled to open his eyes. What entered his eyes was a large ceiling. His vision was a little dim, and a faint light shone in from outside the window. He could vaguely see some creatures that looked like cows and elephants pulling carts loaded with goods outside. In that case, was he picked up from the desert by a convoy? The boy struggled to sit up. His fingers brushed against the cold wall of the car, and he sighed softly. He looked at himself carefully. He was still wearing the same black windbreaker and holding the purplish-black greatsword in his hand. His fingers stroked the greatsword that exuded an ancient aura. Some fleeting light seemed to flash in his head, but he could not grasp it. "I can't remember anything," shaking his swollen head. The boy stared out of the car sullenly, not knowing what to do. When the boy was in a daze, the curtain of the car was gently lifted and the dazzling sunlight shone in. A sturdy middle-aged man slowly appeared in the boy's line of sight. When the man saw the boy looking at him in a daze, he smiled and said, "You're awake, little girl." The boy opened his mouth. After a long while, he said in a clear voice, "I'm a man." After saying that, he stared blankly at the man with unfocused eyes and sighed gloomily. Did he look like a girl? The middle-aged man was a little embarrassed to meet the boy's soulless gaze. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Our convoy found you in the desert. You have been unconscious for 4 days, and we thought it would take some time for you to wake up. We are a convoy from Xingling City's Qin family. This time, we happen to pass by here on a mission. Speaking of which, you are quite lucky. There are always large wild beasts wandering in this desert at night. If you were not careful and bumped into them, there would not even be bones left. Thank you for saving me." The boy nodded. His stiff face twitched slightly. Then, he used 2 slender fingers to pull the corners of his mouth into an arc, as if he wanted to smile. "Little fellow, how should I address you?" Seeing this, the middle-aged man chuckled and asked. The boy tilted his head and tapped it with his fingers. He shook his head gently, indicating that he could not remember anything. "Have you lost your memory?" The middle-aged man sighed and patted the boy's shoulder with his large hand, comforting him. "It's all right. You will remember sooner or later. We still have about 5 days before we reach Xingling City. When that time comes, we will see if we can find someone to help you clear your memory. For now, you should have a good sleep." After patting the boy's shoulder again, the middle-aged man turned around and got off the car. The boy turned his head and stared blankly out the window. In his head, a lump of paste was stirring vigorously. Who am I? Why did I appear here? Where am I going back? The intense headache caused the boy to furrow his brows. A row of cold sweat flowed down his forehead. His 2 hands clutched his head tightly as his consciousness gradually blurred. "I can't remember anything." 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, the boy stayed in the car and did not get off. Because his body was still a little weak, his basic necessities were taken care of by the middle-aged man. This caused the boy to feel a little embarrassed. However, since he could not move, he could only resign himself to his fate and stay in the car. Xingling City was located in the northwest of the mainland. It was close to the edge of Taiyuan region and was the only city within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. The degree of its prosperity could not be compared to the average large city. The forces within the city were tangled and complicated. As one of the members, although the Qin family could not be considered the local landlords, they were still considered to be relatively famous. When the Qin family's convoy entered a relatively large manor, the middle-aged man could not wake the boy up no matter how much he called out to him. Therefore, he could only personally send the boy into the Qin family and place him in a room. At the same time, he also brought a person who looked like a doctor over. It was somewhat inconceivable that he could do this for a stranger. After the doctor finished taking the boy's pulse and treating him, he sighed and respectfully said, "It's nothing. He just fainted from exhaustion. He'll be fine after some rest. However, I have tried to remember his memories, but there was no effect. It should not be unblocked. Perhaps the family head will have to find an alchemist. The middle-aged man smiled bitterly. Alchemists were rare creatures, and there were not many in Xingling City. It was not easy to find one, just because one wanted to. When the boy opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on a wooden bed. The soft bedding made him feel the urge to fall asleep. There was a faint fragrance in the room, and he was still holding the incomparably large purple-black greatsword in his hand. The sky was still bright, and a slight breeze came in through the window. At this moment, the feeling was incomparably comfortable. The door was gently pushed open, and the middle-aged man walked in with a kind face. He smiled at the boy and said, "Little guy, you really can sleep. You slept for 5 days straight. How are you? Are you feeling better?" Seeing him come in, the boy supported himself against the wall and sat up. Something suddenly flashed through his mind. He held his head with one hand, and his slender eyebrows were tightly knitted. It was as if he was trying hard to recall something. "What's wrong?" The middle-aged man saw his pained expression and quickly asked, "Yun, Nuo, Xing." After a moment, the boy squeezed out these 3 words through gritted teeth. "What? Name? Your memory has recovered?" The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. Then he was slightly delighted. When he returned home, he found a doctor to treat him. Although the doctor said that the effect was not great, he did not expect that he would remember the name. "I think it is. I don't know." The boy, Yin Nuoxing, knocked on his head and nodded. Then he shook his head. He was not too sure. "Anyway, this should be the name. Otherwise, how could I remember it?" The middle-aged man touched his chin and said, "As for the other things, don't worry. You will remember it one day. Don't force yourself for now." He patted the boy's head with a serious face. The middle-aged man reminded him a few more times before he got up and left. Yin Nuoxing nodded and watched him leave. Then he lay down and wanted to continue sleeping. However, he could not fall asleep no matter what with his eyes open. In his mind, the 3 words Yin Nuoxing kept echoing as if they were about to be engraved. "Father, father, is that my brother?" Just as the middle-aged man stepped out, a 4 or 5-year-old girl ran over and quickly jumped onto him. Her delicate little face was very cute, and her pair of big eyes kept blinking. The middle-aged man, hugged the little girl. His face was full of doting. He reached out and rubbed her little head. He smiled and said, "No, your brother has gone to a very, very far place." When he said this, the man's face was a little sad. When he thought of his son who had passed away, his heart was filled with sorrow. However, the boy's arrival made him feel a little relieved. Furthermore, the boy had lost his memory. Then when will he come back? When you grow up, you will be able to see him. In the room, the huge sword beside the bed emitted a faint light. Wisps of purple energy were channeled into Yun Nuoxing's head. Chapter 2. Half a month had passed. Yin Nuoxing, who had recovered, had been taken care of by others, so it was not appropriate for him to leave immediately. He decided to stay for a period of time. Although he wanted to help, there was nothing much for him to do. The Qin family still had some status here, which could be seen from the number of servants. The daily chores were basically done by the servants. It was not his turn to manage the market, so he had nothing to do. When he was free, he could only accompany the family head's youngest daughter, Qinyu. Perhaps it was because he looked kind. The little girl was not estranged from him at all. She followed him in and out like a little tail. Perhaps it was because of the loss of his son, the family head of the Qin family, who was the middle-aged man. Yin Nuoxing's memory loss evoked his love for his son. Although Yin Nuoxing wanted to leave, he was persuaded to stay in every possible way. Usually, he took care of Yin Nuoxing no less than his own son. This made Yin Nuoxing suppress the idea of running away. Although it was a little awkward in the first 1 or 2 months, after all, no matter what the family head of the Qin family thought, Yin Nuoxing was still living under someone else's roof and was a little uncomfortable. However, after getting familiar with him, he got used to everything. Although Yin Nuoxing wanted to recover his memory, he remembered that day when the family head of the Qin family found a doctor for him and said that the possibility of recovery was not high. Although Yin Nuoxing was a little doubtful, he did not say anything. He had also found a doctor in the city, but most of them said that there was no cure, which made him a little depressed. However, at this time, having a place to stay was also a good choice for a person of unknown identity and origin like him. After losing his memory, there were only two things left with him: the nameless ancient sword in his hand and a sparkling and translucent purple-red pendant hanging in front of his chest. Looking at the energy contained in it, other than knowing that it was not an ordinary item, he did not gain anything else. Usually, he would wander around this big city. From time to time, he would walk into some jade shops and weapon shops and take out these two things, hoping that someone would recognize what they were. However, no one had seen the sword before, and no one knew who it was. Instead, they met someone who wanted to buy the sword. Crystal pendants like this can be found all over the streets. You can buy them in any jewelry store. Although your pendant craftsmanship is very exquisite, who are you going to ask? Maybe it's custom-made. This sword is very old. It should be an antique. Little brother, do you want to sell it? I'll buy it. The news he heard was all irrelevant, which made him speechless. He decisively turned around and left. It was only when he started running that he managed to shake off the guy who was shouting about buying a sword. After strolling around like this for half a year, he had visited almost half of Star Spirit City, visited all the jade artifact shops, and visited many strange people. However, he couldn't get a single word out of them. At this time, he couldn't help but feel anxious. Other than the academy in the city, he had basically visited all the other places. Along the way, he even followed the head of the Qin clan, Qin Hui, to the place where he was first picked up. However, half a year had passed. Even if something was really left behind, it would have been picked up if it was dropped in an ordinary place. Moreover, it was in this place that was covered in yellow sand all year round. It might have been buried under the sand. When they followed the original path and made a trip back, they found that everything had changed. Naturally, they couldn't find any valuable clues. Under this kind of clueless wandering, time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. His memory didn't recover at all. The only thing he remembered was that he caught a glimpse of a towering tree and an illusory voice at that moment. If it's such a big tree that towered into the clouds, it must be an ancient species that has been left behind for thousands or tens of thousands of years. Those things aren't easy to find now. Hearing Yun Nuoxing's description, Qin Hui scratched his head in distress. He could only squeeze out this sentence after racking his brain. Big brother, why are you looking for that big tree? On the other hand, the 6-year-old Qin Yu often wandered around him. Her delicate face and big watery eyes moved strangely. Her innocent and cute appearance made Yun Nuoxing want to pinch her cheeks every time. Oh, Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and hugged the little girl who was scratching his long hair in front of him. He rubbed her head lovingly and said with a smile, "Perhaps that place is my home. I heard that only demons live in forests with big trees. Could it be that Big Brother is a big demon?" Ah. Qin Yu smiled faintly and scratched Yun Nuoxing, then ran away happily. Yun Nuoxing, was there such a handsome demon? Rubbing his fair face, Yun Nuoxing raised his eyebrows and reached out to grab her from a distance. He hugged her in his arms and scratched her. Hee, Big Brother, stop scratching me. Hee, Yor won't laugh at you anymore. Qin Yu giggled in his arms and shook her little head to avoid him. Ancient area. Okay, I'll remember it. Yun Nuoxing rubbed her little head and smiled. He looked at Qin Hui and nodded. Qin Hui rubbed Yun Nuoxing's head and didn't say anything. Although he took care of Yun Nuoxing as if he was his son who had already passed away, it was ultimately just a dream. There would be a day when he would wake up from his dream, and Yun Nuoxing would also leave. Perhaps the only thing that wouldn't change was the time they spent together. Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at the family head. He saw a trace of loneliness in his eyes and sighed inwardly. He naturally understood what he understood, so he didn't expose anything. In the past year or so, he also understood the family head situation and felt some sympathy in his heart. During this period of time, he also tried his best to play the role of a son, so Qin Hui would be more or less comforted. Ever since he received this information from Yun Nuoxing, Qin Hui ordered the Qin family to search for information about ancient areas in the desolate border. Of course, this excluded the forbidden areas that all living beings in the world avoided. The realm of the gods was extremely vast, to the extent that it was immeasurable. It was generally divided into 5 regions. In a counterclockwise direction, they were the Sourcepeak region, the Extreme Plain region, the Ganyuan region, the Kuan Origin region, and the Divine Land in the center. Star Spirit City was located in the extreme northwest of the Sourcepeak region. Although it was called a city, it spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers. However, most of it was undeveloped areas, such as the desert. A city like this was merely a drop in the ocean in the Sourcepeak region. There were countless cities in the Sourcepeak region, and mortals would only be able to walk through 1 or 2 cities in their lifetime. In addition to the Sourcepeak region in the northwest, there was the Extreme Plain region in the southwest, the Kuan Origin region in the northeast, the Ganyuan region in the southeast, and the Divine Land in the center. Among them, the Divine Land was the most vast. Mortals might not be able to cross a single region in tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years. With such a vast region, it was inevitable that some strange things would be born. Forbidden areas. No one knew how these regions were born. They had existed since the beginning of the world. Strange energies flowed within them. Chaotic space-time and strange force fields have been passed down to this day. Many people and many forces had tried to force their way in, but the result was that no eggs would remain intact when the nest was overturned. There was even a first-rate force on the continent that went to explore, but in the end, no one came out alive. At this point, people's expressions changed when they talked about the forbidden areas. Then, what exactly is in the forbidden areas? Why are so many people willing to risk their lives to go in? Yin Nuoxing asked. Some people say that every forbidden area has a ruin left behind by a high ancient god. Others say that several gods are buried inside. Perhaps there are also some extremely precious items? I'm not too sure. After all, ordinary people like us don't have the qualifications to come into contact with the core information. All the information I know is passed down from the common folk. Qin Hui scratched his head and said helplessly. Also, if you want to find a tree, the Divine Land's Divine Wood Palace might be a good choice. This force is very famous in the entire realm of the gods. Oh, night fell. On the horizon, a crimson moon quietly climbed up and sprinkled its ice-cold moonlight on the earth, draping a thin veil over the world. Everything was silent. It was a quiet night. In the huge Qin manor, Yun Nuoxing sat in a quiet pavilion by the lake and kept playing with Qin Yu, who was sitting beside him. The little girl's giggles made the night seem more lively. The little girl liked to stick to him. He didn't know if she thought of him as an older brother that she had never met before. Yin Nuoxing was also happy to play with her every day. He was like a male nanny. When the crimson moon climbed to the top of the sky, it was already late at night. Yin Nuoxing saw Qin Yu yawning, and only then did he see the crimson crescent moon above his head. Yu, it's late. It's time to sleep. Yin Nuoxing said gently as he stroked Qin Yu's little head. No, big brother, you haven't finished telling me the story yet. Little Yu yawned and shook her head. She kept shaking Yin Nuoxing's arm, begging him to finish the story. Yin Nuoxing was silent for a while, then nodded and said, Okay. Little Yu had a joyful look on her face as her tender laughter reverberated throughout the pavilion. The moon was setting in the west. It wasn't until it had descended for a while that little Yu fell asleep in Yin Nuoxing's arms. Yin Nuoxing sighed and carried her back to her room. He lifted the blanket and covered her with it, then quietly returned to his room. It's been 2 years. In the end, I still have to leave. Yin Nuoxing sat in front of the table, one hand supporting his fair face. 2 years had passed, but his appearance hadn't changed at all. He still looked like he was 14 or 15 years old, and it was as if his growth had stopped. 2 hours before dawn, Yin Nuoxing put down a piece of paper on the table and kept his purplish-black greatsword in his pendant. His soft black hair that reached his waist was draped behind his windbreaker. Before he left, he took one last look at the room, and his eyes revealed some longing. He gently closed the door. Under the crimson moonlight and with a faint mist surrounding him, he took one last look around the Qin family manor. His gaze lingered on a few places, then he quietly walked to the main door. "I will miss you." Yin Nuoxing bowed deeply to the manor behind him. Then he leaped and flew towards the east. He didn't look back, afraid that if he stayed any longer, he would give up on the idea of leaving. On the small mountain behind the manor, Qin Hui kept looking at the black figure gradually disappearing into the distance. His eyes were filled with gentleness and reluctance. "Child, have a safe journey. If you're tired, come back. This will also be your home," Qin Hui murmured. He didn't stop Yin Nuoxing. That would be unfair to Yin Nuoxing. After all, he also had things that he wanted to find and things that he couldn't let go of. Yin Nuoxing, who was far away, naturally didn't hear the murmurs on the mountain. His figure nimbly leaped between the eaves without making any sound. He left as soon as he said he would. In fact, he didn't have a specific destination. Most of the ancient areas were guarded by powerful wild beasts, so he couldn't go to those places. As for the forbidden areas, that was even more impossible. Moreover, he didn't think that he would settle down in those places. Perhaps it was just as the family had said, and he had to make a trip to the divine continent first. However, the distance between the Taiyuan region and the divine continent, when he thought of that astronomical figure, Yin Nuoxing immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a little dizzy. "Now, I can only take one step at a time." Yin Nuoxing patted his forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly regretted walking out. However, there was no turning back. He could only move forward. In the Qin manor, in Yin Nuoxing's original room. Father, where did Big Brother go?" Little Yi rolled around on the bed and hugged the quilt into a ball as she asked Qin Hui, who was standing in front of the table. Qin Hui gently opened the paper lying on the table. He couldn't help but smile when he glanced at it. "I went out to play." That was the only sentence written on the paper. Then, there was a drawing of Yin Nuoxing making a face at the side. "This kid." Qin Hui smiled and shook his head. He smiled at Qin Yu, who was entangled in the quilt, and said, "Big Brother went out because he had something to do. He told little Ye to eat until you're white and chubby so that he can come back and pinch you in the future." "TSK, I won't let him pinch me." Little Ye shook her head unhappily. Chapter 3. The sun hung high up in the sky, shining its scorching rays down. The hot air of midsummer was like a tongue of fire licking at one's body, causing one to sweat profusely and feel sticky all over. It had to be said that Star Spirit City was so big that there was no end to it. Just the residential area alone had taken Yin Nuoxing 2 months of running. Fortunately, he had saved up the pocket money that Qin Hui had given him, so he didn't have to eat and sleep in the open. If he was tired, he would have to stay in a hotel. If he was hungry, he would have to go to a hotel. Even so, the exhaustion of running during this period of time was enough for him to raise his middle finger at the city. Why is this city so big? Looking back at the tall city walls, Yin Nuoxing wiped the sweat from his forehead and cursed angrily. Without looking back, he walked towards the dense forest in front of him. Strolling in the forest, the trees filtered out the heat and the cool sunlight shone on his body. Although it was still hot, there was a warm feeling. Yin Nuoxing took out a bit of his mind and let the burning soul technique operate on its own, allowing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to cleanse his body. This was something that had awakened in his memory when the patriarch had taught him a profound technique. At that time, he felt that since it was something that was engraved in his memory, it shouldn't be too bad. Thus, he learned it. However, he felt that this profound technique was abnormally strange. It was related to the strength of the soul, and it actually consumed the strength of the soul to operate it. One had to know that normally there weren't many people who would specifically cultivate the strength of the soul. Only with age or a breakthrough in level would the strength of the soul increase. Using the burning soul technique would consume the strength of the soul. If one didn't cultivate the strength of the soul, it would be difficult for them to bear such a consumption. When Yin Nuoxing learned it, it was just for fun. He felt that a strange technique must have its strong points. After actually leaving the city, Yin Nuashing wasn't in a hurry to travel. After all, the current him didn't have the ability to travel across the entire Taiyuan region. Mortals could walk for hundreds of millions of years and still wouldn't be able to finish traversing the entire Taiyuan region. He was just a bit stronger than ordinary people. Even if he was a cultivator, when faced with the distance between two regions, he could only shake his head and sigh. If he rashly walked on the road, he would either die of exhaustion, be eaten alive by some wild beast, or be skinned alive by others. Yin Nuashing walked along the river. Her body was bathed in the warm sunlight. With a bamboo shoot in her mouth, she closed her eyes in satisfaction. In the past few months, she had been walking along the river. At night, she would lean against a tree and sleep. Occasionally, she would hunt a few wild beasts to satisfy her hunger. Although it was a little more tiring than when she was in the Qin family, it was a different feeling in her heart. So, suddenly, the sound of wind breaking came from the forest. A black arrow shot straight towards Yin Nuashing, who was by the river. Although she didn't see anything, the instinctive sense of danger made Yin Nuashing shudder. She opened her eyes abruptly and took a step to the side. Then, an arrow followed and stabbed into the ground where she had just stood. Yin Nuashing was silent for a moment. What the hell? Yin Nuashing grabbed the black arrow and took a deep breath. Then, he suddenly roared, "Damn you! Who did I provoke?" A faint echo came from the silent forest. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and looked at the forest. He sensed a few auras flying through the forest. He couldn't help but grit his teeth and quickly chased after them. In the forest, 5 or 6 people were holding long swords and longbows. They were continuously attacking a red, slender figure in front of them. From time to time, a few torrents of energy brushed past the figure. That little girl in front, why are you being so stubborn? Just obediently stop, and we'll leave after we take the things. I guarantee that we won't hurt you. A burly man wearing an eye patch and holding a demon-headed broadsword laughed loudly from behind. As if I'd believe you. The red-clothed girl in front turned around and scolded. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the black box. She hurriedly circulated the origin energy in her body to increase the speed. The girl was extremely beautiful. Her pair of slender eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Her quick-witted, ink-black eyes flickered with mischievous craftiness and anger. Her fair skin looked as if it could be broken by the wind. Her charming face was completely pale. A trace of blood was faintly discernible at the side of her rosy little mouth. Hey, since it's like this, don't blame us for being impolite. Brothers go. Capture her alive and properly serve her. The burly man gave a lewd laugh. One of his eyes impudently swept over that exquisite body. When the 5 people beside the burly man heard this, they also grinned a few times. The weapons in their hands mercilessly sent out a few waves of energy. The energy whistled through the air, and when the red-clothed girl heard it, her charming face slightly changed. Bastard! Slut! Shameless! Pervert! The red-clothed girl angrily cursed. She freed a hand and waved out a flame, burning the energy that rushed up behind her to ashes. However, after making this counterattack, the girl's already pale face became even paler. Her body was a little shaky, and even her speed slowed down. It seemed that she was about to reach her limit. Hey, seeing this, the burly man with the eye patch laughed. He took this opportunity to rush to the girl's side. A fist the size of a head directly smashed towards her shoulder. A strong gust of wind came from the side. The girl intended to dodge this attack, but her body suddenly became sluggish. She couldn't dodge and could only watch as the fist smashed towards her. Pong! The muffled sound of flesh colliding rang out. After taking this fist head-on, the girl gave a muffled groan and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Her body flew a few meters away and smashed into the ground. She struggled a few times but couldn't stand up. Yo, why aren't you running? Seeing this, the burly man led the others down and slowly walked towards the girl. He laughed sinisterly, and the ghost-head broadsword in his hand reflected a faint cold light onto the sunlight. The girl sat on the ground and fiercely ground her silver teeth. She refused to let go of the black box in her arms. She stared at the burly man and his group who were walking towards her. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in her eyes, but the powerlessness in her body made her feel very helpless. Cha! On the side, Yin Nuashing suddenly rushed out of the forest. She looked at the girl who was suddenly overjoyed and the burly man with a gloomy expression. She ignored their gazes and waved the black arrow in her hand. She asked, "This arrow, is it yours?" "What, little girl? Are you trying to play with us?" The burly man and his group threw their heads back and laughed. One of them even waved the longbow in his hand, as if to indicate that the arrow was his. A few veins popped out on Yun Nuashing's forehead. She forcefully broke the arrow in her hand. Then, her figure flashed and left behind a streak of golden light. She instantly appeared in front of the man with the longbow and slapped him across the face. Slap! The crisp sound of a slap suddenly rang out. The man was still laughing a second ago, but in the next second, his body was suddenly sent flying. He spun a few rounds and spat out a mouthful of white teeth. He fell straight to the ground with white foam coming out of his mouth. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Damn it, get your weapons. F***CK, kill this little girl. The burly man was stunned for a moment. Then he shouted fiercely. He didn't expect that someone would be defeated so quickly. It was so fast that he couldn't even react. Damn you, I'm a man. Hearing him call her a little girl, Yin Nuashing's face twitched. She moved her body and rushed in front of the burly man. She directly punched his chin. When the burly man saw a fist appear directly in front of him, he was stunned for a moment. Then, a vicious look flashed across his eyes. He raised his fist, which was the size of a praying mat, and smashed it towards Yun Nuashing's little fist. Looking at the two mismatched fists, Yun Nuashing's face twitched. Before her fist made contact, her fist turned into a palm. Then, she directly hugged the two thick arms. Huh! Yun Nuashing shouted. She exerted strength in her arms and flung the burly man away. Then, with a shake of her body, she avoided the strong wind that came from behind her and appeared in front of the burly man again. In a flash, the burly man saw the blue sky and white clouds. Then, in the next moment, Yin Nuashing's figure appeared in front of him. A large foot was rapidly enlarging in front of him. Bam! A foot directly covered the door. The burly man only felt his vision go dark, and then he fell heavily to the ground. The dull sound made him unable to help but muffled a groan, and then a scream came out. Ah, damn you! Seeing the burly man lying unconscious on the ground, Yin Nuashing pursed her lips. She glanced at the four people who were carefully retreating. Then, she snorted. Her figure flashed, and she chased after them. She waved her hand at them. Damn you, second uncle. Damn you, third uncle. Damn you, fourth uncle. Damn you, fifth uncle. After taking care of the burly man quickly, the remaining four people also shouted, Damn you, third uncle. They were sent flying, leaving behind a ground full of teeth and hideous blood. Each of them lay by the side, holding their chins and wailing. Professional, painless tooth extraction business. I'm honest. I won't take any money this time. Yin Nuashing clapped her hands, looked around, and picked up a passable long sword. Ow! We agreed that I won't take any money. Ow! The owner of the sword covered his mouth and said with difficulty, Damn you! This is called spoils of war. You guys are so thick-skinned. Do you know that my hand hurts from hitting you? Yin Nuashing gave him a kick. Then, she took out a rope and tied the 6 of them to a big tree. Then, she knocked them out one by one. Then, she glanced at the woman in red who was in a daze in the distance. Ignoring her, she walked in another direction. Young lady, wait. Seeing that he was about to leave, the woman immediately came back to her senses. She looked at the 6 loaches on the tree happily and staggered after him. Crack! Yin Nuashing seemed to have heard the sound of his brain's nerve center breaking. He immediately laughed sinisterly in a bad mood. He twisted his handsome face and turned around. He smiled sinisterly at the woman who was standing in front of him, who was constantly panting, Miss I. A.M. A. Of. Ah. The woman was shocked by Yun Nuoxing's angry roar. Then, she looked at him carefully. After a long time, she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't see clearly. However, you really look like a girl." After saying that, she stuck out her tongue coquettishly. "Oh, no." Yun Nuoxing slapped his forehead. His heart was about to break down. However, she didn't have any ill intentions, so he couldn't lose his temper. Then, he angrily reached out and pinched her delicate face. "Little brat, how dare you pinch me?" The woman shook her head and glared at him unhappily. "Oomph." Yin Nuoxing turned his face to the side and ignored her. He walked straight in another direction. "Hey, little brat, don't go." Seeing that he was about to leave again, the woman hurriedly reached out and pulled him back. "What?" Yin Nuoxing took a step back and looked at her warily. He was displeased. "Hee hee, can you do me a favor? There will definitely be a reward after this." "No." Yin Nuoxing was decisive. "I haven't said what it is." The woman lowered her head and muttered. "First, it's usually a little dangerous to help if there's a reward. Second, you're being hunted down, so you must have offended someone. Who knows, you might have a force of your own. I don't want to get involved in a dispute between two forces. Third, it's so troublesome. I'm too lazy." After saying that, Yun Nuoxing shrugged and turned around to continue walking. Hey, don't, young lady. Help me." The woman pulled him back with a pitiful look. Her limpid eyes were shining, and she looked like she was about to fall in love with someone. "Just because you call me a young lady, I definitely won't help you." Yin Nuoxing flew into a rage. "Little brat, I see that you're handsome and mighty. Your martial arts are unparalleled. You have delicate features and a peerless charm. You must be a martial arts genius. What about the truth? You look like a girl. Get lost." Yin Nuoxing flew into a rage. He quickened his steps and couldn't wait to disappear. "Don't sob. Can you bear to see a weak woman like me get bullied?" The woman acted cute and stared at him expectantly. "No discussion. Sob. You're so heartless. You're abandoning me after having sex with me." Chapter 4. The sky was dyed dark, and the sky-blue feather coat was gradually replaced by black clothes. A crescent blue moon wandered on the horizon. The night was silent, and everything was dormant. MMM. The red-clothed girl was jumping on the eaves. After an afternoon of rest, it seemed that her injuries had healed. At least she had the strength to dance now. Her fiery red dress danced in the air along with her waterfall-like black hair. Her graceful and delicate body stretched out with beautiful curves, and she was like a fairy dancing under the moonlight. Her red lips, white teeth, and fair skin were extremely dazzling under the moonlight. Her limpid eyes flickered with a crafty light. "In the end, I still came." Yin Nuoxing leaned on the eaves and muttered in his heart. After all, if he didn't come at that time, who knew what kind of shocking words she would say in the future? How unlucky. I just left the house, and I already met this ancestor. Who knows how unlucky I will be in the future? Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Where was the cute and moving girl or hot-blooded and energetic youth that he had imagined? She was indeed quite beautiful, but it was a little different from what he had imagined. How is it? Is it beautiful? After the girl finished a round, she landed in front of Yin Nuoxing. Her main mouth was curved into a crescent moon shape, and she stared at his eyes with some anticipation. Too close. Smelling the fragrance on her body, Yin Nuoxing calmly took 2 steps to the side. He looked at her and said, "Oh, I didn't look, but it's probably quite good because the moonlight is gone." He pointed at the dark clouds and smiled. "Little brat, you dare to laugh at me." The girl puffed up her cheeks unhappily. She stomped her slender legs and reached out to pinch his face. Yin Nuoxing calmly took 2 steps back and said indifferently, "I have a name. Don't call me little brat." "Little Yun." The girl dragged her voice, and it was so sweet that it was sickening. Yin Nuoxing shivered. He reached out to scratch the goosebumps on his arm and glared at her with a bitter face. "My name is Yun. Thank you for your guidance tonight." Yun smiled and extended her flawless hand. Glancing around, Yin Nuashing took a step forward and reached out to gently hold that jade-like hand. Her soft and boneless touch made others have the urge to play with it. However, he only shook her hand symbolically before letting go. Looking at the dazzling city in the distance, Yin Nuashing said, "Now, can you tell me what you need my help with?" Yui nodded and said, "That city is the residence of the Wei clan in Star Spirit City." Wait, what city is this? Yin Nuashing felt that something was amiss. Star Spirit City. Yin looked at him in surprise. Huh. Yin Nuashing opened her mouth wide. After a while, she said, "Why is it still Xingling City? I've been walking east for a few months and even sat on a flying beast. Why is it still Xingling City? I've never been to school. Don't lie to me. Yes, this is Xingling City. It's the east of Xingling City. You must have come from a city in the west, right?" Yin touched her cheek with her finger and thought for a while before saying, covering her forehead with her palm. Yin Nuashing was on the verge of collapse. How is this a city? This was more like a region. She said, "It's okay. Continue." Yin nodded and continued. In the east of Xingling City, the two biggest clans are the Wei clan and our Yu clan. The two clans have been fighting for a long time. This time, they didn't hesitate to ask for external help to eliminate the other party. This time, the Yu clan had their external help stolen from the Wei clan. Although it was only half of it, if they lost it, they wouldn't be able to answer to the other party. Is it that black box? What is it? Yin Nuashing tilted her head and asked. I'm not sure. This time, I was just being playful. I suddenly felt that I should do something for my clan. That's why I took the initiative to ask for a gift. Originally, there were 2 boxes. Who knew that something like this would happen? Yin stuck out her tongue and smiled. You exposed yourself. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at her and said, Originally, there were 2 of them. Now, one of them has been stolen, right? Yeah. Yin lowered her head and softly replied. Then how do you want to get it back? Break into the city and take the stronghold, or steal it? Yin Nuashing nodded. Yin lowered her head, embarrassed. She didn't say anything. All right, I don't have a plan. Yin Nuashing looked at her and couldn't help but sigh. This job wasn't going to be easy. What's the level of the strongest person in the Wei clan? I think it's the Myriad God Realm, Yin said with uncertainty. There's a difference of 1 level. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. She was only at the late stage of the Divine Heart Realm. There was a difference of 1 level between her and the Myriad God Realm. Of course, it wasn't an insurmountable gap. What about you? Me? Yin stuck out her tongue and said with a red face, I'm at the middle stage of the Divine Soul Realm. So weak. You won't be of any use at all. Yin Nuashing face-bombed. Hey, Big Sister's talent is very good, okay? I'm just a little lazy. Forget it, Yin said with her hands on her hips. However, the more she spoke, the softer her voice became. All right. I know. I'm just a little lazy. I'm much better than those who haven't come into contact with the emptiness realm of the Divine Soul Realm. Amen. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at her, nodded, and said seriously. Yin's face was red with embarrassment. Anyway, let's go take a look first. Yin Nuashing shrugged. Then, she leaped up and rushed toward the dazzling city palace. Little brat, Yin murmured and followed her unwillingly. In the city mansion, waves of noise came one after another, as if they wanted to flip the eaves over. Looking at the entrance, one could see people dressed in all kinds of clothes coming and going. They were all rushing into the mansion, congratulatory words coming out of their mouths. It seemed like they were celebrating something. Congratulations, Master. You've gotten 2 magical artifacts. It shouldn't be a problem for you to destroy the Yu family and dominate the East City. Master, you're so wise. You thought of intercepting the Yu family's goods and destroying the Yu family in return. I'm afraid the title of 2 families in 1 city will be removed from now on. Now, the Wei family is still the dominant family. On the main seat in the palace, a middle-aged man was congratulating the people who came from all directions politely. His face was full of pride. His broad hand covered the black box on the table beside him. So lively. Do you really think you've defeated the Yu family? On the roof, Yu listened to the people below talking about the Yu family and Wei family. She was so angry that she wanted to find something to bite. By the way, can't you ask for help from your family? Yin Nuoxing leaned on the roof and looked at the lively scene below. She didn't know why, but she felt a little unhappy. This will cause the two families to fight in advance. No matter which side wins, the foundation of the family will be damaged. Father wouldn't want to see such an ending. That's why he asked for help. It's all my fault, Yuan said with grievance. Yin Nuoxing patted her head and said, "Can you control the fire elements from a distance?" Yuan shook her head and said, "I don't think I can do it before I reach the mortal level. Now I can only set fire at a short distance." "What about the delayed combustion? It should be possible. How fast can you run?" "You can't outrun the realm of 10,000 gods." Yuan blushed a little. "Well, this is for you. Take it." Yin Nuoxing threw her a golden bead. "What's this?" Yuan reached out and took it. It was cold to the touch. Light elements rushed into her body, making her feel like she had run wildly. Light element. Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. It was one of the 3 rarest elements among the 9 elements. It was known for its speed and had the title of fastest. Yin Nuoxing covered her rosy little mouth with his palm, slapping back the scream she wanted to make. He frowned and said, "Don't be so surprised." "Woo-woo." Yuan stared at him with wide eyes. Her expression was as if she had seen something rare. After a moment, she unhappily shook off his hand. "The time limit is only 3 minutes. Run after you set fire. What about you?" I'll steal something and hit him with a stick." "Hit him with a stick?" Yu Yin's little mouth formed in O shape. She looked at Yin Nuoxing in disbelief. After a long while, she said, "Little brat, you really talk big. That's someone from the realm of 10,000 gods, the same level as my father. Furthermore, people from the realm of 10,000 gods have already given birth to spiritual power. He will be able to sense your every move. People who came into contact with the realm of 10,000 gods would give birth to spiritual power. However, in the early stages of birth, they would not be able to use this kind of power. However, it could increase a person's perception. Furthermore, with the birth of spiritual power, the mental fatigue would be reduced by a lot. I'm just saying, what if he keeps it?" Yin Nuoxing curled his lips and said, "Then be careful. If you can't do it, come back." Yuan stared at him, a trace of worry flashing past her limpid eyes. Yin Nuoxing nodded and said in a low voice, "Go, burn the tree at the entrance, then burn the door as well. Also, set fire to the pillars of the mansion. Burn those 6 pillars, then throw a pile of fire into the main hall. Also, do you think that fire elements are free?" Yuan was so angry that her entire body was trembling. After thinking for a moment, she nodded fiercely. "Of course." Yin Nuoxing grinned, almost angering Yuan to death. In the mansion, the Wei family head was talking enthusiastically with the guests around him. His dark eyes were full of smugness. "Not good. It's on fire." Just as the hall was filled with joy and harmony, flames shot up to the sky without warning. Outside the transparent windows, many figures could be seen dancing in a hurry. The scorching temperature turned the hall into a place like an oven. Wisps of black smoke rose into the air above the city mansion. "Quickly put out the fire. Evacuate the guests." The Wei clan's patriarch stood up abruptly. Just as he finished speaking, a fireball the size of 3 meters rolled directly into the hall. Billowing heat waves hit them in the face, and the clothes of many people in the surroundings burst into flames. Fortunately, the fireball didn't explode. Otherwise, the hall would have turned into a mess. "Which bastard dares to cause trouble in my Wei family?" The Wei family head waved his sleeves, and an aura surged out. It hit the fireball and extinguished it. At this moment, he also understood that this was definitely not an accidental fire. Someone was definitely deliberately sabotaging it. Boom! Just as the Wei family head shouted, the 6 pillars on the roof collapsed at the same time. They pierced through the ceiling and smashed onto the ground, splashing up a wave of dust. Those who were close to them were directly overturned. The scorching heat waves ignited the robes of those people. Suddenly, there were a few more people on fire in the main hall. "Who is it?" The Wei family head had just shouted 3 words and was about to walk out when his heart suddenly skipped a beat. A sense of danger arose spontaneously. However, before he could turn his head, he suddenly felt an intense pain at the back of his head. Then his vision turned black, and he staggered forward. He turned his head with difficulty. Before his vision turned black, he saw a rather handsome face. The somewhat feminine eyes flickered with an innocent expression. "You?" The Wei family head's eyes widened. He didn't understand where this person came from. He didn't even feel the fluctuation of energy. However, before he could finish speaking, Yin Nuoxing flashed behind him and knocked him unconscious with the back of her sword. Then, she raised her leg and kicked him hard. Bang! The dull sound of flesh colliding caused Yin Nuoxing to grin when he heard it. The patriarch of the Wei clan rolled out like a stuffy gourd and crashed into a collapsed pillar. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the chaotic main hall. It seemed that no one was paying attention to the situation here. She picked up the black box at the side and disappeared in a flash, leaving behind some gradually dimming light particles. It's really a tragedy for the Wei family to encounter you. On a short mountain outside the city, Yuan looked at the dilapidated ruins of the Wei family. A few wisps of smoke were rising. Then, she looked at Yin Nuoxing, who seemed to be in a daze. She felt somewhat frightened. Who would have thought that a dignified expert of the Myriad God Realm would be knocked unconscious by a stick? This stick strike was a bit too skillful. Thinking of this, Yuan felt some lingering fear, as expected of the fastest light element. In the face of extreme speed, nothing was useful. "Let's go, little brat. There's no point in staying here." Yuan sighed and turned her head to Yin Nuoxing with a smile. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head, stretched, and yawned lazily. After a while, he threw the black box to Yuan and said, "Okay, I've got this. I should get out of here." After saying that, he patted the dust off his windbreaker and was about to walk down the mountain, but Yuan grabbed his clothes. He had no choice but to stop and look at her with his head tilted. "Don't be in such a hurry to leave, little brat. I haven't thanked you yet." Yuan pulled Yin Nuoxing's windbreaker and dragged him to the other side, laughing as she walked. "There's no need." Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and muttered, "I'll just do a good deed today." "Of course." Yuan curled her lips and pulled his windbreaker even harder, as if she was afraid that he would run away. "Moreover, my home isn't far. Look over there." Yuan smiled and pointed her jade finger at the night sky, at the place where the green light was shining. Yin Nuoxing followed her finger and looked over. He couldn't help but stare blankly. A towering ancient tree seemed to be standing between the heavens and the earth. Its branches and leaves were tens of thousands of feet long. Its rich vitality transformed into specks of fluorescent light that were extremely bright under the night sky. It was like a beacon in the night sky that could be clearly seen from thousands of miles away. Under the ancient tree, there was a small town. It was as if the ancient tree was a cradle, and it was thriving under the protection of its radiance. So big, Yin Nuoxing was entranced by the sight. After a long time, he finally muttered these words. "Let's go." Yuan smiled and dragged him towards the small town under the huge tree. Chapter 5. The small town was nestled next to a big tree, shrouded in green light. The breeze swayed, and the unique smell of the green leaves and the trees permeated the air. The surroundings were peaceful and full of vitality. "Father," outside the largest mansion in the city, the master of the Yu family, who was dressed in a green robe, was pacing back and forth uneasily in front of the door. His eyes glanced towards the southeast, and his mind was somewhat restless. When he heard the familiar voice, his heart rumbled, and he put down the huge rock hanging in the air. His sorrowful face suddenly swept away the darkness, leaving behind a warm face. He opened his arms to welcome a red figure into his embrace, and said with a smile, "Our precious daughter is back." When the surrounding people heard this, they could not help but laugh, and all of them heaved a sigh of relief. The master of the Yu family had completely ignored the so-called magic weapon. and all he talked about was her safety. "Father, I'm really fine. Your daughter is so smart. How could anything happen to her?" Ewing stuck out her tongue and said with a smile. When Yinuashing heard this, layers of black lines appeared on her forehead, but she did not jump out to say anything. The Wei family, very good. After listening to Yu Yin's story, the master of the Yu family nodded, and some coldness surged in his dark eyes. Father, the Wei family, was accidentally demolished. Yu Yin said this sentence shyly. The surrounding people, including the master of the Yu family, were very shocked. Demolished? Accidentally? What did this girl do when she went out for a walk? How could she demolish the Wei family? Yu Yin hesitated for a moment and then told the whole story. However, before anyone could say anything, Yinuashing spoke first. "Don't look at me. You set the fire, you burned the house. I didn't do anything." Everyone laughed embarrassedly, but in their hearts, they muttered, "If you didn't knock the master of the Wei family unconscious, how could the fire burn so happily?" An expert of the 10,000 God realm was not so easy to deal with. "Thank you, young lady, for saving my life." The Yu family patriarch bowed with a smile. Yuyin cursed in her heart. She tugged at her father with all her might. To Yun Nuashing, this form of address was like a sharp thorn in her heart. Now that he mentioned it, Yun Nuashing gritted her teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. She scratched her head with both hands. After a while, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said to the confused Yu family head, "Uncle, I am a man. Everyone looked at each other, then carefully looked at him. They were all stunned. Half a minute later, when they indeed saw that he looked like a boy, they could not help but burst into laughter. The head of the Yu family was a little embarrassed. "I'm leaving." Yin Nuashing dragged her battered spirit and silently walked away. "Hey, little brat, don't always think about leaving." Ewing grabbed his hand and pulled it back. "When a matter is done, I leave in a huff, hiding my identity and name. What you want has been brought back. Why should I stay?" Yin Nuashing sighed and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave. "Take a rest for a night. It won't take such a long time to travel." After saying that, Yuyin ignored his opinion and directly dragged him into the house, leaving a group of people with different thoughts. The head of the Yu family smiled and shook his head. Then, he led the people of the Yu family into the manor. In the hall, 2 black boxes were placed on the table. The head of the Yu family smiled and pushed away one of the boxes, the box that Yin Nuashing and the others had snatched from the Wei family. He said, "One of these 2 boxes is actually a fake. The real one should be this one." "What the?" Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded. Her black eyes flickered as she stared at Yuyin. The latter also looked over in confusion. Finally, she looked at the head of the Yu family and scolded at the same time. "Then why did we go and tear down the Wei family?" "Haha, isn't this a backup plan? Who knew that you would directly tear down the Wei family?" The head of the Yu family laughed and shook his head. He looked at Yin Nuashing with a strange gaze. The Yu family and the Wei family have been fighting for God knows how many years. However, the situation was broken by such a young man. Now that the Wei family was in chaos for a period of time, the Yu family could directly deal with them. Yin Nuashing lowered her head and rubbed her palm on the fake box. After a while, she gently opened it. A piece of jade-like white fragment lay quietly in the middle. It was only the size of a palm and did not have the slightest energy fluctuation. It looked like a broken piece of jade. Yin Nuashing stretched out her hand and picked up the jade piece. She could not help but be startled. She used almost all her strength to pick up the piece of jade that was neither big nor small. "Why do you have to put something in a fake box?" Yin Nuashing frowned. She lifted the jade piece and looked at it over and over again. This jade piece weighed at least 50 kilograms. Its surface was pure white, and there were no patterns on it. She did not understand why this broken piece of jade would have a weight that was completely inconsistent with its appearance. Add weight. The head of the Yu family did not know either. When he borrowed a magic tool from someone, this jade piece was not mentioned. He was only told that there would be 2 boxes, one real and one fake. Yuyin rolled her eyes at him and did not say anything. After looking at it carefully for a while, Yin Nuoxing gently placed it back into the box. The moment he closed the lid, he suddenly felt an ethereal tremor in his soul, which made him slightly stunned. His hand trembled slightly. Under the strange gazes of Yin and Yin Nuoxing, he picked up the broken jade piece again. However, this time, he did not have that feeling. Frowning slightly, Yin Nuoxing put the jade piece back. Then, he picked it up again and repeated it a few times. He waved it in front of the two of them and said, "This jade piece, can you give it to me?" Yin and Yin Nuoxing looked at each other. They did not know what he wanted this broken jade piece for. The head of the Yu family hesitated for a while. Then, he nodded and said, "All right, it's not anything important anyway. However, what do you want this for? It's just a small piece of jade." "I don't know either." Yin Nuoxing shook his head and said uncertainly, "It feels like something strange." "Strange things?" Yin furrowed her beautiful brows. She didn't understand what he meant by strange. Yin Nuoxing nodded and said, "Maybe I'll find out after I do some research. Let's rest here for tonight. There's no hurry to leave tomorrow," the head of the Yu family said with a smile. Just now, Yin Nuoxing had told him that he was rushing to a certain place. The head of the Yu family did not suspect anything. Of course, since he was here, he had to properly entertain him. After all, he had saved his daughter. It would not be right if he did not entertain him. "Thank you, uncle," Yin Nuoxing said with a smile. "There's no need." Yin helped him tidy up a clean room. Then, they sat down and chatted for a while. However, Yin Nuoxing did not have the vigilance of an outsider. Or perhaps, he thought that it was something insignificant to others. He quickly explained everything. Or perhaps, he was just narrating it like a story. A towering ancient tree. Yin raised her head and looked at the ceiling. After thinking for a long time, she shrugged and said helplessly, "Other than Xingling City, where there's such a tree, I don't know if there's any other place that matches your imagination. Other places with trees are probably not suitable for humans to live in. I don't think it's a natural formation, right?" Although he was prepared, Yin Nuoxing could not help but feel disappointed. He had already seen the tree in this small city. There was nothing special about it. It was completely different from the one in his memory. Don't be anxious, little brat. Finding out one's identity is an important matter in life. Compared to people like us who stay at home all day and never step out of the house, your life will definitely be more exciting than ours. Yin patted his head and comforted him. Yin Nuoxing pouted his little mouth and furrowed his slender eyebrows. He tilted his head and looked at her without saying a word. What kind of important matter in life was this? There shouldn't be such a setting, right? Yin laughed and pinched his cheeks. After saying good night, she quietly went out. In the middle of the night, Yin Nuoxing tossed and turned, unable to sleep. When he thought of the broken jade, he just saw his mind could not calm down. He quietly went to the roof and lay down on it. At this time, there were no white clouds in the sky. Hundreds of millions of stars hung in the sky, flickering with light. A curved, ice-blue moon sprinkled a faint moonlight. After a long time, Yin Nuoxing sat up with a quiver. He took out the white jade from the pendant and carefully examined it for a moment in his palm. However, he still did not have any clues. He pinched the broken jade between his two fingers and raised it high under the stars. His eyes narrowed slightly. Rays of starlight passed through the jade piece, illuminating it until it was transparent like glass. He could see that there were extremely complicated runes flickering with a faint light. The faint light seemed as if it would be extinguished at any time. As expected, that feeling was not groundless. I just don't know if it has any connection with me. To be able to carve such complicated runes, it must be a high-level magic tool. Yin Nuoxing smiled slightly. Although it was only a corner of the runes, he could more or less guess a little. He immediately engraved the runes that seemed to be extinguished in his mind. At the same time, the white jade piece emitted a strong white light. It broke free from his fingers and directly crashed into his glabella, merging with his soul. Yin Nuoxing suddenly opened his mouth wide. However, he covered it with one hand, not allowing himself to make any sound. "What is this thing?" He cursed angrily. Then, he hurriedly checked and found that the white jade piece was quietly residing in the depths of his soul. A faint light shone on his soul, making him feel a little warm. Yin Nuoxing looked at the jade piece as if he was facing a great enemy. A person's soul was a very important place. Having something inexplicable barge into it really scared him out of his wits. However, the jade piece did not do anything after entering his soul, leaving him confused. His soul carefully looked at the jade piece that was entrenched in it. After a long time, he finally reached out his hand and carefully touched it. The jade piece suddenly trembled. Yin Nuoxing's right hand involuntarily spread out. With a flash of light, the jade piece suddenly appeared in his palm. After looking at it in astonishment for a while, Yin Nuoxing tilted his head. He reached out his hand and poked the jade piece. With a thought, the jade piece slowly merged into his palm and appeared in his soul. What the hell? Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. He felt that the jade piece did not seem to have any evil intentions. His raised spirit relaxed again. His right hand surged with light again. The purplish-black great sword that was as long as his body floated above his palm. The moonlight scattered on the sword, reflecting a purplish light. When it shone on Yin Nuoxing's face, it looked rather demonic. He held the jade piece in his left hand and the great sword in his right hand. His two hands slowly leaned together. The jade piece and the sword sheath collided, producing a crisp sound. In the silent night, there was no sound at all. Did I get it wrong? Yin Nuoxing twirled his long hair and stuck out his tongue. He reached out his hand and wanted to separate the two objects. However, Yin Nuoxing used all his strength to pry at the jade piece. He realized that the jade piece did not move at all. It seemed to be stuck to the great sword. Yin Nuoxing thought that he did not use enough strength. He used all his strength to pry at the jade piece. The veins on his arms bulged and his face turned red. He seemed to be using all his strength. This is... what? What's the situation? Yin Nuoxing was so embarrassed that he flew into a rage. He waved his hand and threw the long sword to the ground. Then he sat at the side, panting. He stared at the jade piece helplessly. The jade piece ignored him and remained still for a long time. Then, it slowly withdrew its light. It actually seeped into the purplish-black greatsword like liquid, causing the latter to shine even brighter. Yin Nuoxing blinked his eyes and picked up the giant sword. He looked at it from top to bottom, but he couldn't see any changes in the giant sword. He hesitated for a while, then kept it in the pendant and sat on the ground. Little brat. Yin Nuoxing had just sat down when a sweet voice called out to him from behind. Why did you come up? It's so cold in the middle of the night. Yuyin walked softly to Yin Nuoxing's side. She took out a cotton-padded jacket and draped it over him. Then, she gently sat down beside him and snuggled into the jacket. Yuyin seemed to have just taken a bath, and there was a faint fragrance on her body. Her waist-length hair was a little damp, and she was wearing a plain white dress, which made her look a little more elegant. Ahem! Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and turned his face away slightly. He said, I couldn't sleep, so I came up to get some fresh air. Then why did you come up? Yin Nuoxing asked. I couldn't sleep, so I came up to get some fresh air, Yuyin said with a smile. All right, I was just kidding. When she saw Yin Nuoxing rolling his eyes, she could not help but laugh. Then, she said, I just asked my father. He doesn't know about those places either. He only said that if we go to the Divine Prefecture, we might be able to find something. How can we go that far? Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He had heard this news more than once. Well, although it's impossible for mortals to cross a region, that's not necessarily the case. There are specific portals between the 6 regions of the Divine Realm. We should be able to reach the Divine Prefecture after passing through those portals. Really? Yin Nuoxing was slightly delighted. Probably. Where can we find these portals? Hearing his question, Yuyin immediately revealed a cunning expression and smiled slyly. What's wrong? Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. He had a bad feeling about this. If you stay with me for a while, it's not impossible for me to tell you. Yin Nuoxing was stunned and rolled his eyes. Chapter 6. Accompany you? Yin Nuashing suddenly felt that his brain wasn't working properly. He asked doubtfully, "Accompany you for what? I haven't thought about it yet." Yuan smoothed out the hair in front of her forehead and smiled slyly. "Can't I just ask anyone for this kind of information?" Yin Nuashing shuddered and mumbled, "You won't be able to find it. The teleportation device isn't here." "Then where is it? Accompany me for a while, then I'll tell you." "Then, sister, can you accompany me for a while?" No bargaining. "How long is a while?" "I haven't thought about it yet." "So it doesn't have a fixed time?" When Yin Nuashing heard this, he jumped up like an angry kitten and stared at Yuan as if he had seen a ghost. Of course, Yuan was happy to see him like this. She covered her mouth and giggled. Then, she pulled Yin Nuashing to sit down and pinch his cheeks. "You're so cruel." Yin Nuashing gritted his teeth and tried his best to suppress the urge to leave a row of teeth marks on her fair arm. Ha ha, just like that. After leaving for less than a year, Yin Nuashing was once again living under someone else's roof. However, although it was said that they were enduring humiliation and enduring hardships and were willing to sell themselves in order to obtain information, in reality, the two of them didn't go out much. They had always been living in seclusion. Yin Nuashing was too lazy to go out. Even the neighbors didn't know that such a person had come to the Yu family. This made Yin Nuashing a little confused. Logically speaking, a piece of information bought him an unlimited amount of time. No matter what, he should make good use of it, right? What kind of game was this? Xiao Yi's family was missing an older brother. Could it be that Yu Yin's family was missing a younger brother? There couldn't be such a coincidence in this world, right? One day, seeing that Yin Nuashing was a little depressed, Yuan smiled and pinched his face out of habit. "Do you think that I have nothing better to do by keeping you here?" "A little." Yin Nuashing unhappily shook off the hand, nodded and muttered, "Don't worry, I have a use for you. Also, I'm not restricting you from going out. Go out occasionally. It's not good for your health to stay at home all the time." Patting his head, Yuan gently walked away, leaving him in a daze in the hall. Yin Nuashing was confused. She scratched her head and didn't know why she suddenly said that. Half a month passed. Borrowing the power of Yin Nuashing and Yu Ye destroying the Wei family last time, the Yu family took advantage of the opportunity to attack the chaotic Wei family. The people in the city also understood the meaning of "everyone kicks a man when he's down." The originally deep-rooted Wei family was almost destroyed the moment the people raised the flag of rebellion. The overlord of the city, which had been rooted for hundreds of years, was destroyed in an accident. Some people sighed, and of course, there were also people who gloated. A month passed quietly. Yin Nuashing was also someone who didn't like to go out. Every day, he would stay in his room and cultivate. Go out and play. You're going to rot if you stay at home. Don't come back for half a day. Yuan, who couldn't stand it anymore, dragged him to the door. Her pretentious and delicate look made Yin Nuashing not know whether to laugh or cry. He had never seen someone who insisted on going out. "Let me go. I want to cultivate. I want to be a homebody. I won't go out." Yin Nuashing screamed and hugged the pillar tightly. No matter how hard Yuan pulled on his windbreaker and pinched him until his face turned red, he wouldn't go out no matter what. This made her lose her temper. "If you don't go out, I won't tell you about the teleportation portal." Seeing Yin Nuashing hugging the pillar like a sloth, Mei Mao sighed. She slowly narrowed her eyes into a dangerous arc and said with a smile, "Isn't it just going out to play? Let's go out then. What do you want to buy?" Hearing this, Yin Nuashing was so scared that he jumped down from the pillar. Then, he patted his chest and laughed. Yuan rolled her eyes at him and dragged him out of the door. Then, she fiercely slammed the door and tied him up, leaving Yin Nuashing outside to drink the northwest wind. Oh, what a sad story. Yin Nuashing had no choice but to jump around the city with a giant sword, hoping to find something in this small city. Of course, dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. Other than sweating every day, he didn't find anything else. As a famous city, Xingling City had a vast area. One could imagine how prosperous it was. There were many restaurants, and it was very lively. Although Yin Nuashing didn't like to go to those noisy places, He had to admit that these places were the best places to search for information. As long as he pricked up his ears, any strange news or gossip could enter his ears. Although he listened to the information with some dissatisfaction, it was just as Yuan said. No one seemed to mention the words teleportation gate, let alone the relevant information. Even when he asked, no one knew about it. This made him very unhappy. However, he was also a little puzzled. Since he didn't hear any information about it, how did she know about it? Ancient ruins? Yinuoshing suddenly heard something from a few tables away. He quickly pricked up his ears and quietly changed his seat. Have you heard? A ruin has appeared outside Xingling City. It seems to have been there for a long time. Many people from the major forces are fighting to get in. I don't know what's inside. You're talking about the Sunset Battlefield, right? It said that 2 god-level experts fought there in the past and flattened the entire mountain range. So many years have passed, and countless experts have swept that place back and forth, but they didn't find anything. Why did a ruin suddenly appear? It seems that there's a barrier there. So many years have passed, and the energy has dissipated. It's been exposed, and people have discovered it. Ancient ruins? 2 gods were buried in that battlefield. I don't know who they are. Do you think a divine artifact will appear this time? Divine artifact? Even if we get that kind of thing, it'll be a hot potato. If we don't have the strength to protect ourselves, we won't be able to keep it even if we get it. Moreover, if we want it, will those major forces allow it? I don't know how many forces will come this time. Something left behind by a god is enough to make them go to war. I just don't know who will be the final winner. Sigh, those things have nothing to do with us. Right now, we should just obediently cultivate and strive to come into contact with the divine soul realm as soon as possible. After watching the 5 of them leave, Yinuoshing took a sip of tea and muttered to herself, ancient ruins. Since we have nothing to do, let's go take a look and see if we can find anything interesting. Yinuoshing smiled and walked out of the restaurant. You want to go to the ancient ruins? In the courtyard of the Yu family, Yuan stared at Yinuoshing in astonishment. Her expression was as if she was looking at a lunatic. She had also carefully investigated the ruins outside the city that had been in an uproar recently. People with low cultivations basically could not even enter that former battlefield, let alone go in to look for anything. Therefore, when she heard Yinuoshing say that, her first thought was that his brain had been burned out. I'm just going for a stroll. Just treat it as having fun. It's nothing. Yinuoshing nodded and smiled. Yuan crossed her arms and looked at him blankly. She circled around him and sighed. She stretched out her slender, jade-like hand and flicked his forehead. She didn't know what to say. Are you sure you still have irrationality? Yuan sighed. I'm sure, I'm very sure. This is my rational answer. Yinuoshing's gaze was firm, but he didn't have any confidence. To be honest, he was just curious and wanted to take a look. If he encountered any danger, he had the light element, so running away wouldn't be a problem. After another sigh, Yuan grabbed his hand and pulled him to the back of the Yu family. Standing in front of an ancient house, Yuan told him to wait outside while she walked in. Yinuoshing sized up this house that was suffused with an ancient aura. The plaque on the door was written in an uncommon language, Forbidden Hall. It was suffused with a strange aura. However, Yinuoshing didn't recognize anything unusual about this language. He only knew that he recognized it. Not long after, Yuan came out from inside. Her red dress was covered in dust, and her delicate face was also dyed gray in several places. She looked like a little kitten. Yinuoshing gave her a glance. His face tightened, but he laughed until his back shook. Not noticing Yinuoshing's abnormality, Yuan directly put a green bracelet on his left hand. Then, she bit her finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. The bracelet immediately emitted a faint red radiance, which disappeared after a short moment. What is this? Yinuoshing stopped laughing and used her sleeve to wipe her pretty face that was painted on, and asked, Yeah, I don't know. It said that the ancestors used it to ward off evil spirits. Yuan patted her clothes and reminded him with a serious expression, Be careful. If something is wrong, come back immediately. Yinuoshing nodded and felt a little warmth in his heart. He waved at her and jumped out of the manor, leaving behind you Een, who had a disappointed and frustrated look on her face. Endless yellow earth stretched as far as the eye could see. Huge cracks extended as far as the eye could see, and it was unknown how many kilometers it extended. There was no vegetation in this place, and there wasn't even a trace of life. On the lifeless earth, some fragments of unknown materials could be faintly seen standing on top of it, emitting astonishing fluctuations. Sunset Battlefield, the place where the self-titled sun god fought with another god. Yin Nuashing flew on the yellow earth, his gaze constantly sweeping the surroundings. Along the way, he heard many rumors about this battlefield. It was said that dozens of eras ago, a god who had cultivated his divine authority to the extreme and called himself the sun god fought with another god and fell here. It was said that there was a vast amount of energy left in the world, and only gods and powerful cultivators could enter this land. However, when Yin Nuashing stepped on this destroyed land, he didn't feel anything wrong. It was no different from the places he usually went. This made him suspect that the information he received was wrong. After flying for a long time, a huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground. He was stunned and quickly stopped, carefully sizing up this huge pit. The pit was about 10,000 kilometers long and wide, and it seemed to go directly into the depths of the Earth's core. As far as the eye could see, it was pitch black, and there were no other colors. It was so dark that even souls could be sucked in. It doesn't seem to be here. Yin Nuashing raised his eyes and secretly looked down. Then he flew around the edge of the huge pit, his eyes fixed on the bottomless pit. In the deep and dark pit, a golden light suddenly flashed. Yin Nuashing suddenly stopped and opened his eyes wide, wanting to take a closer look. Did I see wrongly? After a long time, he still didn't see anything. Only then did he rub his sore eyes and collect his thoughts. He flew towards the place where many people had gathered in the distance. 2 hours later, Yin Nuo planet stopped near the mountain range. Many experts were either floating in the air or riding on exotic beasts. Their eyes were all fixed on an empty space outside the mountain range, waiting for the right moment. That place! Yin Nuashing hid in the mountain range outside. He saw that the group of experts had spread out over 1,000 kilometers with the empty space as their center. His eyes passed through the tall forest and looked straight at the people in the outermost circle. He carefully walked over. He completely concealed his aura, and even his vital signs were at their lowest. A layer of faint light particles enveloped his body, blocking the detection waves that were scattered around. In this place where there were no relatives or friends, one more person meant one more competitor. He knew what would happen if he was seen by others with his weak strength. Hence, he covered himself up tightly before he even got close. The purplish-black great sword shot out from the pendant without any warning, releasing a faint purplish light that enveloped Yin Nuashing. It came into contact with a white energy layer that suddenly appeared in front of him, and he crashed into it. Where are they? His line of sight suddenly changed. It was still the same place, still the same position. However, there wasn't a single person in the surrounding sky. It was as if the group of people waiting for him was just an illusion. In the distance, a magnificent palace rose from the ground. Endless ancient buildings stood in the mountain range. The cracks on the walls gave off a feeling of vicissitudes. Ancient ruins? The buildings that suddenly appeared stunned Yin Nuashing for a moment. Then he sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 7. That's right. The barrier is still active. No wonder no one is here. After pondering for a while, Yin Nuashing nodded his head. However, he still had some doubts. How did I get in? Could it be that the so-called barrier is just a decoration? Is it used to scare people? He muttered to himself and shook his head. While he was here, someone must have tried to break through the barrier. However, no one had entered until now. This was enough to prove how strong the barrier was. Suddenly, he saw the purple glow that enveloped his body and the purplish-black greatsword that was floating on his left side. He immediately felt a little stunned. It seemed that the greatsword had broken through the barrier. What is the origin of this greatsword? Even the barrier set up by the gods can't stop it. Yin Nuoxing grabbed the great sword in his hand. His eyes glanced around before he dashed toward the ancient palace. I don't have much time. I have to take a good look. Thinking of this, his lips involuntarily curled into a slender arc. The palace and the mountain exuded an ancient pressure. However, when it came into contact with a layer of purple glow, it disappeared like snow melting away. Yin Nuoxing secretly felt lucky. If it wasn't for this strange greatsword, he wouldn't even be able to enter today. Yin Nuoxing sighed as he stood in front of the gate that was as tall as the mountain. He carefully sized up the place. After discovering that there wasn't any danger, he boldly strode to the front of the palace. He reached out his hand and gently pushed open the stone gate that was covered in moss. Behind the gate, a pitch-black tunnel that was 100 feet wide extended forward. There were some holes in the wall that were irregularly arranged. It looked like they were some sort of mechanism. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. After the stone gate was completely opened, the great sword in his hand suddenly vibrated. The great sword turned its defense line, and the tip of the sword pointed at the pitch-black tunnel in the distance. It seemed that something was attracting it. There's something inside that is related to it? Thinking up to this point, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but feel a little excited. She looked at the passageway, nodded, and quickly ran in. If these things work together, they can definitely turn a person into a sieve. After running for about 2 hours, passing through 2 tunnels and 3 secret rooms filled with mechanisms, Yin Nuoxing finally arrived at a spacious hall. She turned around and glanced at the hall with fear in her heart. She patted her chest and ran towards the tunnel in front of her. Occasionally, when he passed by some stone rooms, he would carefully open the doors and stare at the things inside in a daze. Then, he would shake his head and leave without touching anything. Pill Hall. Raising her head to look at the 2 ancient words on the stone plaque, Yin Nuoxing was slightly startled. After hesitating for a moment, she still opened the door of the Pill Hall. Boom! A deep rumbling sound came from the ancient stone door. The thick stone door that was covered in moss was slowly pushed to the side. A strange fragrance that had been hidden for countless years suddenly gushed out. She couldn't help but sneeze. Behind a stone door was a stone room filled with rows of cabinets. Wisps of medicinal fragrance leaked out from the cabinets. At the top of the cabinets, there were many white, jade-like scrolls. Presumably, they were some prescriptions. Forget it. I'm not a pharmacist. It has nothing to do with me. After taking a few glances, Yin Nuoxing left and closed the door. If the people outside knew about this, they would definitely pull him up by his collar and scold him. Damn it, we finally entered the ruins. Why didn't you take anything? The deeper he went into the ruins, the more Yin Nuoxing could feel that there seemed to be a vast energy fluctuation behind the wall. Some of the mechanisms seemed to be waking up. He had to leave enough time for him to make a complete retreat. Secret room. In a huge stone room, Yin Nuoxing raised his head to look at the words engraved on the ceiling. Beside him, there was a passage that hung high. It was dozens of meters above the ground. If he didn't sense it with his soul, he probably wouldn't have noticed that dark passage. The spacious stone room was dozens of times bigger than the other rooms. Countless holes filled the walls. A few long swords that looked like mechanisms were placed in the corner. They were emitting a piercing light. There were also a few big bells placed in the 4 directions, guarding this stone room. How do I get past the height of dozens of meters? Yin Nuoxing clasped his hands together and prayed. He was praying that the mechanism here wouldn't be activated too early. He raised his head to look at the passage and kept walking around. He didn't want to waste time, but he also wanted to take a look. He walked around half of the ruins, but he still couldn't find a thing that made the huge sword react. Moreover, after Yin Nuoxing entered, the huge sword didn't move at all. No matter where he pointed the huge sword at, there wasn't the slightest reaction. This made him wonder if he had come to the wrong place. How could there be no reaction after entering the ruins? After a moment, he thought of something. He placed the huge sword on the ground and lightly stepped on it. He muttered a few words in his heart. Then he pointed at the huge sword and shouted, "Rise." More than 10 seconds passed. The huge sword didn't move at all. A faint purple light enshrouded the sword, making it look very mysterious. After a minute, it still didn't move. It seems like I was thinking too much. Yin Nuoxing held his forehead and laughed at himself. He hadn't learned how to fly on a sword before. How could it be so easy for him to step on the sword and fly around? Wong. Just when he wanted to get down and use the light element to rush up, the huge sword let out a soft sound. After a moment, it trembled slightly. Then, carrying Yin Nuoxing, it soared into the sky. Ugh! The sudden situation made Yin Nuoxing slightly happy, but he immediately realized that the huge sword that suddenly flew up seemed to be unable to be controlled as he wished. He could only stare at the ceiling that was approaching in an instant, and before he could laugh out loud, he crashed into it head-on and immediately let out a shrill scream like a pig that was being slaughtered. Ouch! The dull sound of the collision was accompanied by the sound of another heavy object falling to the ground. Dust flew everywhere. Yin Nuoxing was lying on the ground. He hugged his head and rolled around. His clothes were stained with dirt. He couldn't help but groan. After rolling on the ground for a while, Yin Nuoxing stood up resolutely. He rubbed his aching head and jumped onto the sword. He roared. Again, the huge sword responded and rose from the ground. Dong! The dull sound of the collision was like the sound of a drum. If someone was here, their heart would tighten because of this sound. Ayo! Roar again. Ayo! Woo! F***ck continue. Awoo! After trying more than 10 times, Yin Nuoxing was lying on the ground. There was a big bump on his head. His handsome face was bruised and swollen. His nose was bleeding and tears were flowing down his face. His lively eyes were filled with grievance. At this moment, the huge sword flew over and circled around him as if comforting him. Baby, just fly me up. It hurts. Yin Nuoxing wanted to cry. When he saw that the sword suddenly had intelligence, he couldn't help but wail. The giant sword spun twice and seemed to understand what he said. It flew into his hand and used a wave of energy to absorb Yin Nuoxing and directly lifted him up. Moon goddess above, sky sovereign below. Turn, turn. God said we have to turn. Seeing that they were heading straight for the ceiling, Yin Nuoxing was so scared that he started babbling nonsense. Then, he hurriedly closed his eyes. He seemed to have heard the sound of the huge hammer hitting the wall. The huge sword carried him close to the wall and changed direction at the critical moment. It rushed into the tunnel. After rushing into the tunnel, the jade bracelet on Yin Nuoxing's wrist suddenly emitted a silver light, illuminating the dark tunnel. Yin Nuoxing didn't feel the pain that he expected. He slowly opened his eyes. After seeing that nothing was wrong, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, when he saw the shiny bracelet on his wrist, he couldn't help but be stunned. In the bracelet that was as white as jade, a red line slowly moved. The weak light was extremely dazzling in this dark tunnel. After Yin Nuoxing saw the light, the bracelet trembled slightly. The white light wriggled and spread to his arm and body. Finally, it enveloped him. He looked at the bracelet in surprise. When he didn't feel anything unusual, he heaved a sigh of relief. The huge sword carried him and rushed to the top floor. With the help of the weak light, Yin Nuoxing seemed to see a dark platform to the side. He quickly turned around and patted the huge sword. Hey, there's a... The huge sword ignored Yin Nuoxing's words and flew straight up. It fluctuated for a moment, and a grievance similar to that of a human was transmitted to his mind. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but be stunned when he sensed the emotion transmitted to him. He scratched his head. A sword? How could it transmit human emotions? A few minutes later, the speed of the huge sword slowed down. Yin Nuoxing stretched out his hand and looked around with the help of the light from the bracelet. There was a ceiling above his head. It seemed like this was the top floor of the ruins. The top floor was extremely huge. Just the height alone was 1,000 feet. It was much bigger than the bottom floor. There was a vast energy faintly transmitted from the depths. What caught Yin Nuoxing's attention the most was that the huge sword trembled slightly. An indescribable emotion was transmitted to Yin Nuoxing's mind. That feeling was as if it had seen something that it cared about. It's here? Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing looked inside and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The walls on both sides of the top floor weren't made of green rocks. On both sides, there was a sparkling and translucent orange crystal wall. The flowing light illuminated this place as if it was daytime. He could faintly feel a huge amount of energy flowing within the crystal wall. What a big deal! Looking at the crystal wall on both sides, Yin sighed repeatedly. He couldn't tell what it was. He only knew that it wasn't an ordinary object. He could feel it from the energy flowing within it. As he slowly walked towards the top floor, Yin saw that the crystal walls on both sides had changed from orange to a rich jadeite color, and the energy flowing inside also caused his heart to palpitate. If the energy inside the crystal walls accidentally exploded, he would definitely die. At the end of the passageway, there was a stone door that was only a few feet tall. It suddenly appeared in the middle of the crystal wall, as if it was embedded in the crystal wall. The simple stone door didn't have any flowing light or energy restrictions. Yin gently pushed the stone door to one side. Yin couldn't help but be startled when she saw the door being opened so easily. She turned around to look at the passageway that she couldn't see. She swallowed her saliva, grabbed her greatsword, and stepped into the stone door. Behind the stone door was a secret chamber that was about 1,000 feet in size. The four walls were shining with a golden light and seemed to be indestructible. Clusters of crystals were placed on the floor like cabbages, and colorful lights were shining on this small world. The spiritual energy had condensed into clouds, and when one reached out his hand to touch it, he would feel that his palm was moist. Yin widened her eyes at the Xian crystals all over the floor. She licked her lips, her cheeks twitching a few times, and laughed dryly. Are these all Xian crystals of the immortal grade? According to its purity, it could be divided into 10 grades: common grade, low grade, middle grade, high grade, excellent grade, fine grade, top grade, immortal grade, sacred grade, and peerless grade. Depending on its purity, the energy it contained was also different. Apart from being used to speed up cultivation, it could also be used to refine medicines, make talismans, set up formations, forge weapons, and so on. It had many uses. Normally, warriors would carry thousands of kilograms of it with them in case of emergency. However, he couldn't use the Yin at the moment. After all, his cultivation was still too low. If he were to use it recklessly and absorb it into his body, he might end up exploding. With so many Xian crystals of the immortal grade here, it's hard for me to find anything standing in the golden stone room that suddenly lost its 8 colors. Yin could tell from its color that it was a Xian crystal of the 8th grade of the immortal grade, even though he had never seen it before. He estimated that it was no less than 1,000,000 kilograms. The giant sword had been emitting a faint light since it came in, which made him even more sure that what he was looking for was here. After looking around, Yin walked in with the giant sword in his hand. He felt that the sword in his hand was a little hot. If there was no accident, there should be something buried in the depths. Maybe it had something to do with this unknown sword or the mysterious jade slip. Along the way, he saw a dazzling array of drawings and jade bottles on the floor. Whether it was the things recorded or the medicines contained in them, the quality was several levels higher than those that were randomly placed below. Among them, there were some complicated formations, special talismans, and unorthodox prescriptions. How long will it take to find the medicines like this? Submerged in the piles of Xian crystals, Yin couldn't help but smile bitterly. Since he came in, the giant sword was still emitting a faint light. No matter where he walked, he didn't see the light on its body getting stronger or weaker. But there were so many mountains here. Was he supposed to dig them out? At this time, the giant sword buzzed softly. Some vague information was transmitted to Yin mind, which made him frown slightly. You want me to put all these away? Yin scratched his head. When he saw the giant sword nod like a human, he couldn't help but feel a little speechless. These are not my things. How do you want me to put them away? This time, it was the giant sword's turn to be speechless. Okay, I'll put them away. When I find them, I'll throw them out. Okay. Yin nodded. Putting away a pile of formations that were randomly placed, he slowly put the 8 colored mountains into the pendant. His hand reached inside and grabbed something that was a little hot. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but be stunned. He quickly grabbed that thing and fished it out of the pile of Xian crystals. Looking at it carefully, he found that it was an 8-meter-long golden bow. Green patterns decorated it and outlined complicated talismans. It was burning hot when he touched it. He was a little surprised. Between his fingers, there was a golden-green, long arrow of the same length. It seemed to be a set. Looking at the empty space behind him, Yun Nuashing casually threw the long bow and arrow behind him. Then he reached into the pile of Xian crystals and fished them out. Ah! Suddenly, his hand grabbed something cold. Yun Nuashing was delighted. He grabbed that thing hard and pulled it out of the pile of Xian crystals. Then he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sure enough, it's this thing. Yin Nuashing smiled. He held a piece of broken jade the size of a palm in his hand. Under the golden light, he could see the formation patterns hidden inside. It was still messy and was made of the same material as the first jade piece. However, the formation patterns inside couldn't be connected. According to his guess, this should be some kind of formation, and it was only a corner of one. The palm-sized jade piece weighed at least 1,000 pounds. Faint light flowed on its surface, looking very mysterious. After he completely engraved the formation patterns inside in his mind, he slapped it on the excited giant sword. After waiting for a while, he saw it fuse into the giant sword. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. After the giant sword absorbed the jade piece, the silver light on the scabbard seemed to be a little brighter. If he had to say, it seemed to be more intelligent. The first jade piece fused into the giant sword gave it a faint consciousness and even emotional fluctuations. What would happen after the second jade piece fused into it? Yin Nuashing was very curious. However, he didn't see any special movements from the giant sword. It just floated in front of him, emitting a light full of intelligence. Boom! As soon as Yin Nuashing stood up, the giant palace suddenly trembled violently. The entire mountain range began to shake with it. Outside the palace, the barrier that enveloped the entire mountain range suddenly appeared. Bursts of starlight pierced through the space and bombarded the barrier. The palace and the ruins are about to be activated. Yin Nuashing stabilized his swaying body. After thinking for a while, he understood something. Suddenly, a touch of paleness appeared on his fair face. Chapter 8. Why are you so fast? I haven't even left yet. Yin Nuashing stood there in a daze for a long time. Only when he was stabbed a few times by the huge sword did he come to his senses. He hurriedly poured out all the things he had just put into the pendant, then walked towards the door. After throwing everything out, the floor in the middle of the stone room suddenly cracked open. A dazzling radiance burst out from within, causing him to hurriedly close his eyes and take 2 steps back. He hurriedly grabbed the huge sword in his hand, ready to deal with any situation that might occur. The radiance gradually weakened, and Yin Nuashing opened his eyes once again. Then, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. On the floor, there was a piece of multicolored jade. It was as perfect and flawless as suet jade, quietly lying on the floor. Its surface sparkled, and multicolored radiance danced around it like fairies. It looked extremely gorgeous and mysterious. What's that? He looked at the ruins that seemed to have calmed down, then looked at the jade piece that had suddenly appeared. After hesitating for a while, he still walked over and curiously stretched out his hand, wanted to pick it up. So heavy! The jade piece that he thought he could easily pick up seemed to weigh more than 1,000,000 kilograms. No matter how hard Yin Nuashing tried, his face turned red. He couldn't lift it up. Phew! After a long time, Yin Nuashing put down the thing that he couldn't lift up. He took a few light breaths and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Forget it. I don't care anymore. Escaping is more important. Yin Nuashing laughed bitterly. He took another look at the jade piece, then turned around and flew towards the door. The light element in his body was also restless. Boom! The palace shook violently for a moment, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Ka-ka sounds came from the walls. The vast energy woke up from its slumber, and the mechanism was about to be activated. He was so scared that he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Furthermore, Yun Nuashing saw an astonishing amount of energy flowing in the space outside the secret room. The energy hidden behind the crystal walls seemed to have come alive, breaking out of its cocoon. Yun Nuashing's scalp went numb when he saw this scene. Fortunately, the energy didn't enter the secret room. Otherwise, he would have died here today. I've gone too far. Seeing that his escape route had been cut off, Yun Nuashing broke out in cold sweat. He could not help but punch the ground. Just as he was thinking of a way to escape, the giant sword in his hand suddenly broke free. Then, under his strange gaze, it flew to the colorful jade piece, circled it twice, and pointed at him. "You want me to put it away?" Yun Nuashing probed when she saw the giant sword's actions. Buzz. The giant sword sank a little, as if it was nodding. This made Yun Nuashing a little curious. What was this strange jade piece? Why did this strange giant sword care so much about it? Seeing Yun Nuashing hesitate, the giant sword flew back and pushed him as if it was urging him. Yun Nuashing smiled bitterly and nodded. She took off the pendant and placed it on the jade slip. With a thought, she put the jade slip away. Clang! Just as Yun Nuashing put the jade slip away, the door of the secret room suddenly closed. A dull sound rang out, startling Yun Nuashing. However, before he could scream, a 3-meter-tall, colorful stone pillar suddenly rose from the ground in the deepest part of the secret room. Yun Nuashing hurriedly took a few steps back, grabbed a fist-sized crystal, and looked at the pillar vigilantly. What surprised him was that nothing happened after the giant pillar rose. He turned his gaze and saw that on top of the giant pillar, there was an ancient scroll that was flowing with a brilliant light. Several kinds of elemental particles were spinning around it, and an astonishing energy wave was emitted, making his legs feel weak. Behind the stone pillar, the golden wall suddenly peeled off, and a door that was as tall as a person slowly appeared in Yun Nuashing's line of sight. Behind the door was a dark passageway, and the words "Main Hall" floated above the stone door, dazzling his eyes with golden light. Looking at the closed door behind him, and then at the small door that led to the main hall in front of him, Yun Nuashing gritted his teeth and hurriedly walked towards the door that suddenly opened on the wall. Just as Yun Nuashing ignored the scroll and was about to enter the stone door, the giant sword turned around and dragged Yun Nuashing to the side of the stone pillar, then knocked on his head. Yun Nuashing laughed bitterly. He hurriedly put away the scroll according to the giant sword's will, then ran towards the stone door again. This time, the giant sword did not stop him, allowing him to run in. After he entered, the stone door slowly shrank until it disappeared in the end. There was not even a crack in the wall, as if the door had never existed. 2 hours after Yun Nuashing entered the ruins, an army of thousands had gathered outside the barrier. Several hundred strange beasts floated in the air, letting out a low growl or two from time to time. In the distant sky, the sharp sound of space being torn apart suddenly rang out, and several dozen streaks of divine light rapidly flew over. Rumble. Following that, it was as if there was an army of thousands of horses galloping. Behind the dozens of streaks of divine light, waves of roars of savage beasts could be heard. Multicolored light was boundless, and mist was overflowing. Dozens of savage beasts rode on clouds and mist, carrying a cultivator on their backs. Although they were stepping on the sky, the sound of thunder could be heard, as if an army of millions had passed through. Those savage beasts were all mutated beasts left behind from the ancient times. All of them were covered in dense scales and looked incomparably ferocious. Their thick horns flickered with a terrifying light under the sunlight. The cultivator in the middle was carrying a fluttering flag, and a blazing temperature filled the air. On top of the flag, there were 3 words written with monstrous might: Fire God Shrine. Fire God Shrine is so impressive. At the same time, a cold laugh came from another direction, and a rumbling sound came from the sky. A huge monster swept across the horizon. Its wings stirred up a gale that pushed everyone away, and a vast pressure rushed towards the people of the fire god shrine in the middle. One of the 8 great ancient families, the chief family. The people of the fire god shrine coldly looked at the group of people on the back of the huge dragon. All of them were on guard, and an austere aura quickly spread out. Both sides were separated by a distance, and their gazes met. The temperature of the air gradually rose, and there was a sign that they were going to fight. Let's rely on our own strength. Let's rely on our own luck. The two forces were very powerful. After confronting each other for a moment, they shouted, and both of them snorted coldly before turning their gazes away. Hee, this place is really lively. The clear sky suddenly darkened, and the night fell without any warning. A stretch of stars suddenly appeared in the sky, and the vast power of the stars shrouded the heaven and earth like water ripples. Crisp laughter like a silver bell reverberated in this place. Star Palace. The two forces slightly narrowed their eyes and raised their heads to look at the night sky filled with stars at the same time. They couldn't help but frown. The 12 stars in the sky suddenly emitted rays of light, and a group of people walked out from the starlight. They glanced at the two forces from afar, and the beautiful woman in the lead smiled. She didn't say anything, and brought the people of the Star Palace to some distance away to maintain a balance between the three forces. Let's join in as well. Just when everyone thought that everyone had arrived, a wild laughter shook the space a few times. Silver-white lightning suddenly penetrated the space, and the condensed starry sky was torn apart. The dark heaven and earth suddenly became bright again, and a sturdy man holding a silver spear appeared beside the people of the fire god shrine, with a dozen or so cultivators. His entire body was surrounded by faint electric aura, and he looked rather powerful. Lightning god shrine. The three forces were stunned for a moment, and then all kinds of different emotions were revealed. The people of the fire god shrine faintly smiled, but the Star Palace and chief family frowned. Heavens, 2 of the 9 great elemental temples came today. Just what is in these ancient ruins that is worth them to mobilize so many people? When the loose cultivators at the periphery saw such a lineup, they were so scared that they almost fainted. The 9 great elemental temples were all transcendent forces in the divine world, and it was rare to see them mobilize so many people. Everyone, why are you wasting your energy here? Why don't we work together to break the barrier? And after we enter, we will rely on our own abilities. The 4 forces confronted each other, and the smell of gunpowder was very strong. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the space not far away, and a group of people wearing purple and gold clothes slowly walked out. The young man in the lead laughed with a voice as warm as the spring breeze. His handsome face and the moving arc of his mouth made people feel like they were in the spring breeze. The Xian family of the 8 great ancient families. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and all of them were a little stupefied. Even 2 of the 8 great ancient families came. What wind is blowing today? Even the Xian family, who hasn't participated in worldly affairs for a long time, has come. The most powerful family among the 8 great ancient families. Just what is it that can attract these big shots of the cultivation world? In less than a day, Star Spirit City will definitely become famous. It actually attracted so many huge forces. It seems like the disturbance here will continue for a long time. Right now, I can only wonder just what is hidden in these ancient ruins. Everyone was far away from the barrier. The concealed barrier contained a powerful pressure, and they basically couldn't get close to it. Only the 5 great forces could withstand it. Everyone, what do you think? The purple-clothed man smiled faintly and said, "Right now, we are the first group of people to arrive. If we join hands and attack, we will definitely obtain the most. We will listen to the young master." The beautiful woman from Star Palace pursed her lips and smiled, then nodded her head. All right, the people from Fire Divine Shrine and Lightning Divine Shrine looked at each other, then nodded their heads in agreement. Since that's the case, let's do it. The people from Qi family shouted and took the initiative to attack downwards. We will forcefully break open the barrier. Those who are not divine kings quickly retreat. The red-haired young man in the lead of Fire Divine Shrine opened his mouth and roared. With a raise of his hand, he smashed down the entire sea of fire, and the blazing temperature evaporated all the water molecules in the air. At the same time, the boundless power of stars and blazing lightning interweaved together and descended from the sky. Carrying a force of 10,000 caddies, they fiercely collided with the barrier. The purple-clothed man also waved his hand and threw out a huge diagram, which enveloped the entire barrier. The huge amount of energy began to break open the barrier. The 5 great figures took action at the same time, and the vast amount of energy seemed to have joined together. The momentum was vast, and it was terrifying. At this moment, everyone's mind trembled. Their bodies swayed, and they involuntarily flew towards the distance. In an instant, they cleared out a space. Suddenly, countless runes appeared on the barrier. Ripples of light flowed, and countless amounts of energy soared, firmly resisting the 5 types of energy. The heaven and earth trembled, and long cracks appeared in the space. It was as terrifying as a big mouth that could devour people. Are they trying to break open the barrier? Are they trying to tear down the ruins? Yin Nuoxing, who was in the palace, was flipped upside down on the ground once again. At this moment, he also understood something and immediately started cursing. Why is this crappy passage so long? After Yin Nuoxing finished cursing, he got up and used all his strength to rush forward. In the passage that was covered in moss, one golden light after another streaked across. Boom! The energy fluctuation permeated into the palace, and the entire mountain range started to shake along with it. Bah! Can the people outside be gentler? Yin Nuoxing fell flat on his face. A large piece of dust fell from the ceiling, causing his face to be covered in dust. After rushing out of the passage, Yin Nuoxing immediately lay on the ground after rolling out of the passage. Then the entire palace started to shake violently. When the tremors stopped this time, he slowly stood up, patted the dust off his body, and slowly sized up the place. The main hall was tens of thousands of meters long and wide. The ancient stone pillars stood erect, and the impact didn't leave a single mark on them. The prehistoric aura filled this space, and a thin mist shrouded this space. There wasn't much energy in this empty space, but on the high platform in the middle, there was an extremely dense energy. That energy seemed to have turned into a thin barrier, isolating the platform from the outside world. The high platform was 1,000 feet long and wide, and it was 100 feet tall. It was like a black rock that had been cut and embedded in the ground. There was no trace of polishing, and it looked indestructible. Is this the main palace? Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and slowly walked towards the high platform. He could not help but tighten his grip on the huge sword. A faint golden light flowed on the barrier, and the runes in the barrier gently churned. The surrounding space showed signs of slight distortions. Yin Nuoxing circled around the barrier and hesitated whether he should enter. However, the sudden tremors caused him to stumble over. The huge sword and the jade bracelet on his left hand suddenly exploded with an intense light, enveloping him tightly. At the same time, the light tore a gap in the barrier, and Yin Nuoxing swayed and crashed into the gap. After Yin Nuoxing entered, the gap in the barrier quickly closed. He took a few steps forward unsteadily before stopping. He instantly held his breath, and his eyes quickly scanned his surroundings cautiously. He held his huge sword horizontally in front of his chest, as if he was facing a great enemy. When Yin Nuoxing stepped in, the world instantly calmed down. It was as if the fluctuations from the outside world could not be transmitted in. The expected attack did not appear, and there were no so-called mechanisms. There was also no oppressive aura in the space. Dozens of golden statues stood on the stone platform. They were at least 20 feet tall, and they formed a circle with their faces facing outwards. They held 18 different types of weapons in their hands and emitted an intimidating cold light. They were motionless, and they did not move even after he barged in. It was as if they had been there since ancient times. The back of the statues was completely covered by a black fog. Even his soul power could not penetrate it, and he was unable to sense what was under the black fog. However, Yin Nuoxing instinctively felt that it was a little dangerous. Yin Nuoxing took 2 steps forward, and an invisible wave suddenly spread out from the black fog, freezing his body. However, before he could be shocked, the jade bracelet and the huge sword exploded with an even more intense light and instantly broke the restriction. He also cautiously took a few steps back and stared at the black fog without blinking. I didn't expect that the tomb I set up would still be open by you. After a moment of silence, a faint voice slowly reverberated in this area that was 100 feet in size. Yin Nuoxing sucked in a breath of cold air. How many years had it been? How could there still be a living being here? Furthermore, from what it said, it seemed to be the owner of this ancient palace. The 2 golden statues suddenly walked to the side, and the black fog slowly dissipated. A huge green-red lotus appeared, and a skinny person sat cross-legged on it. He was dressed in an immortal green robe, and his pale white hair fell to his shoulders. His face was like a skeleton, and his eyes emitted a faint green light, like will-o'-the-wisps. Upon closer inspection, the 2 pupils were strangely diamond-shaped and not round black pearls. Chapter 9. It's not you. Suddenly, a surprised voice came from the skeleton's mouth. Yin Nuoxing was stunned and looked at the skeleton in confusion. The person who looked like a skeleton also looked at him in surprise for a long time. Then he fixed his gaze on the dark purple sword and exclaimed, "This is the Netherworld Ruin Sword." The skeleton waved his hand, and Yin Nuoxing and the sword flew over. They stopped a few meters in front of the skeleton. "Senior, do you recognize this sword?" When Yin Nuoxing heard the skeleton say the name of this unknown sword, he immediately forgot about his situation and asked hurriedly. The skeleton habitually stroked his beard that was no longer there. He looked at him strangely and said calmly, "The Netherworld Ruin Sword, the first famous sword on the divine weapon ranking, divine sword record. Who in the realm of the gods wouldn't recognize it, what?" Yin Nuoxing was shocked. But now, its spirituality has dissipated, its spirit root has shattered, the weapon spirit has dispersed, the karma has disappeared, the runes have shattered, and the talismans have collapsed. Its power is less than a billionth of its original power. It can be said that it is now useless. The skeleton looked at it carefully and said with a bit of heartache, "Kid, you're really wasting God's gift. How could such a precious divine sword be reduced to such a state?" Yin Nuoxing opened his mouth wide and couldn't say anything for a long time. This had nothing to do with him. The sword was right beside him. Who knew what had happened to it? However, the Netherworld Ruin Sword suddenly emitted a strong light, as if it was refuting. It seems that it is not completely dead. Moreover, it is not something that ordinary weapons can compare to. The skeleton looked at the Netherworld Ruin Sword in surprise and said, "Kid, where did you get this sword?" "I don't know. For as long as I can remember, this sword has always been with me." Yin Nuoxing shook his head. "No memory?" The skeleton took a deep look at him. After a long while, he slowly said, "As far as I know, this sword only recognizes one person as its master. There is no news of this sword changing masters. That person seems to be... Who?" Yin Nuoxing asked anxiously when she saw that he had stopped talking. Maybe this had something to do with his background. She was naturally a little anxious at this moment. "I forgot." The skeleton shrugged and said helplessly, "It's been so many years. I'm just a remnant of my soul. My memories of the past have been worn away by time." Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing tilted her head with a dejected look on her face. Although she was mentally prepared, she still couldn't help but sigh when she heard this. She pulled a long face and didn't know what to say. The skeleton smiled faintly and stretched out his hand to summon a green scroll from behind him. He smiled and said, "It's good that someone has come. Before my soul is obliterated, I can still find someone to inherit my lost technique and not let it be lost." I originally planned to wait for the first person to come in to receive my teachings. The skeleton stroked the scroll and said with a hint of gratification, "That pair of eyes?" Yin Nuashing asked. "You even guessed it." The skeleton nodded in surprise and said, "The evil spirit I has the ability to see through all things and decipher all methods. You can understand the rest yourself." After saying that, he flicked his finger and a ray of light flew into Yin Nuashing's glabella. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. She sat down cross-legged and began to absorb the huge amount of information, engraving in her mind. In less than 3 minutes, Yin Nuashing stood up abruptly with an anxious look on her face. "You're done so quickly?" The skeleton was a little stunned. "No, now is not the time for deep comprehension. I have to leave quickly. Someone will come in soon." Yin Nuashing looked left and right to find a way out. "Don't worry." The skeleton waved his hand and placed her on the ground. He smiled and said, "They won't be able to come in for a while." "All right." Yin Nuashing nodded and began to comprehend the main points of cultivating the evil spirit eye from the information. At the same time, her body blossomed with 4 colors of light. Among them, the golden color was the brightest, followed by the red and metallic luster, and the green color was the weakest. She was unable to observe the changes in her body. Her body and mind were deeply immersed in the state of comprehension. However, the skeleton at the side suddenly jumped up and almost threw the scroll in its hand. For the first time, a trace of seriousness appeared on its withered face. For elements, heavy light, light wood, metal, and fire balance. The skeleton sucked in a breath of cold air. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and said, "Abnormal. It's a pity that I don't have that. Maybe this little guy can use the evil spirit eye to the extreme. I'm now very curious about his identity." The skeleton scratched its head. Its green eyes suddenly narrowed and turned into 2 diamond-shaped pupils that rapidly rotated. They want to see through Yin Nuashing completely. 10 minutes later, the green light weakened. The skeleton frowned and muttered, "The past has been sealed. Regardless of whether it's the past or present life, it can't be seen through. Even the future can't be predicted. Just who is it that would go through so much trouble to seal a person? Even the evil spirit, I can't see through it. I don't think there's anyone in this world who can see through it, AI." The skeleton sighed. He reached out and sucked the nether void sword into his hand. The nether void sword immediately exploded with powerful energy. It continuously attacked the seemingly withered but powerful ghost claw, trying to break free from his grip. It's been weakened to this extent. I didn't expect it to still have such power. The skeleton raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I'm just helping you repair your spirit root." Hearing this, the nether void sword immediately quieted down. Seeing this, the skeleton's withered hand surged with green light. It seeped into the nether void sword and drew in the remaining spirit root fragments, slowly reconnecting them. The nether void sword also emitted a faint glow. It absorbed the surrounding energy and appeared to be even more sentient. As expected of a number 1 divine sword, I can't completely repair it with the remaining energy I have. After a long while, the skeleton raised his head and returned the nether void sword to Yin Nuashing's side. He couldn't help but smile bitterly when he felt that his body had used up almost all of its energy. Boom! His soul peeked outside the palace. The barrier that sealed this mountain range was filled with cracks as thick as an arm. It looked like it wouldn't be long before it was completely destroyed. "Is she coming in?" The skeleton chuckled. A strange look flashed through his eyes. With a thought, the energy in the ruins began to boil. An astonishing, murderous intent emanated from this ancient palace. Phew! At this moment, Yin Nuashing, who had been meditating for a long time, slowly opened her eyes. Gorgeous 4-colored energy shot out from her eyes. Then, the color in her eyes fluctuated rapidly. Finally, they were filled with gold. One of her diamond-shaped pupils was red, and the other was silver. There was also a faint flicker of green. It looked very demonic. "So gaudy." Yin Nuashing, who had just woken up, said this sentence the moment she opened her mouth. When the skeleton heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Why is Senior's different from mine? Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked into his eyes. It's not that mine is different from yours. It's that yours is too special. The skeleton covered his chest and rolled his eyes. You're innate with the 4 elements. Don't you know? Seeing his baffled expression, it was the skeleton's turn to be stunned. The evil spirit I is condensed from the pure elemental energy in my body. I've only devoted my life to the research of the wood element. I didn't take the risk of incorporating other elements into my body. Therefore, my eye has always been green, hindering its development. But you're different. The 4 elements are enough to make it reach the pinnacle, especially the rarest light element. With it, your path of cultivation will be like a tiger that has grown wings. You'll be invincible among the younger generation. After Yin Nuashing heard this, he nodded his head in confusion. The skeleton smiled. Stroking the scroll in his hand, he sighed and casually tossed it to Yin Nuashing, saying, "A complete divine great array and some talismans. You also have the wood element in your body. You'll be able to bring out its power. After you're familiar with it, you'll be able to combine it with other elements to sublimate it." Yin Nuashing took the scroll and opened it to take a look. He was immediately wild with joy. He knew that an expert of this level wouldn't have any junk on him. The things he casually tossed out might cause a perilous situation in the world of cultivation. Carefully holding the scroll in his hand, his eyes that had already returned to their original pitch-black color glanced at the slightly small platform. Then, he looked behind the skeleton. There a pitch-black mass was still bobbing up and down. Astonishing energy was constantly rolling, causing Yin Nuashing to feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. Speaking of which, brat, when other people barge into the ruins, they'll plunder everywhere. They can't wait to take the entire ruins for themselves. You, on the other hand, not only did you enter first, you didn't even touch anything. You only took that jade piece. Suddenly, the skeleton laughed. Looking at Yin Nuashing, his gaze was full of laughter. Hearing the skeleton mention this matter, Yin Nuashing's handsome face turned red. Somewhat unnaturally, he turned his head and said awkwardly, after all, those things aren't mine. How can I casually touch them? But you took that jade piece, the skeleton teased. That's what the void underworld wants. Hearing that, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but touch his face. He stuttered for a long time, unable to say anything. The wondrous items in the world belong to those who are fated to obtain them. Don't be so nervous. The skeleton couldn't help but laugh out loud when he saw Yin Nuashing's awkward expression. He continued, "Even if you empty the entire ruins, I won't blame you. But those things that were put out are nothing." The skeleton shook his head with a smile. His withered fingers took off the jade bracelet on his hand. With a wave of his hand, he tossed it in front of Yin Nuashing and smiled. "The truly precious thing is still here." Yin Nuashing hesitated for a moment when she saw the jade bracelet floating in front of her. Only when she saw the skeleton nod his head did she gently put it away into the pendant. She smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Senior." The skeleton casually smiled, after which it turned its head and looked at the large cluster of pitch-black fog behind it. After thinking for a long time, it beckoned with its palm and summoned the fog to its front. Both of its hands swiftly danced and formed seals one after another. As the skeleton's hand seals changed, an enormous pressure immediately gushed out and wrapped around the black fog, exerting its strength to suppress it. Under this pressure, the black mist suddenly tumbled like boiling water. As it continued to be squeezed, the mass of mist became smaller and smaller in front of Yin Nuashing. The energy fluctuations it emitted also became more and more terrifying. In just a short while, the huge mass of black mist was compressed by the skeleton into a round ball the size of a head. It was pitch black and smooth, and one could even see their own mirror image when looking inside. After compressing the black mist into a ball, the skeleton waved his hand, and the black ball went into Yin Nuashing's pendant. The skeleton sighed and said, "From the time I achieved great success until the day I died, I couldn't figure out what this thing was. it gradually became a knot in my heart. I won't be able to fully comprehend it in this life. If you have any opportunity in the future and understand what this thing is, remember to burn a piece of paper and tell me. I will. Yin Nuashing nodded. Since she had accepted his gift, she had to do something for him. After thinking for a while, Yin Nuashing raised her head to look at the skeleton and asked, Senior, I still don't know your name. This old man is Muhan. People call me Muingzi. My title is with God. Of course, it's self-proclaimed. At this point, the skeleton faintly revealed a kind of pride. One of the two gods in the battlefield of the setting sun? Yes. Muingzi nodded and said with a smile, You have to cultivate the evil spirit I will. If one day I don't hear its name in the underworld, I'll jump out and beat you up. After saying that, Muingzi pretended to beat Yin Nuashing. Hee, your peerless technique will definitely not decline. Yin Nuashing shrunk her neck and hurriedly nodded in promise. She looked like she was just short of raising 3 fingers to swear. All right, little guy, you should go out. Someone should be coming in soon. I have to prepare. Hearing this, Muingzi slowly nodded. He rubbed his chin and raised his head. His gaze seemed to penetrate the wall and saw something. Suddenly, a hint of fierceness surged in his eyes as he said, Senior, you're not leaving? Yin Nuashing hurriedly asked after hearing this. I'm already dead. What's left is merely the soul imprint I left behind when I was alive. After so many years, I've reached the point where I'm like a lamp that has run out of oil. Otherwise, how can anyone find this place? The moment I step out of the palace, this mountain range will collapse with me. My only regret is that no one has inherited my evil spirit eye. I'm unwilling to accept this, so I've persisted until now. I don't wish for it to lose its rightful glory with me. Today, you've beaten me to it and obtained the inheritance. I fulfilled my long-cherished wish. I'm so satisfied that I can die. Senior, Yin Nuashing was speechless. He couldn't stop matters of life, old age, sickness, and death. Even if he wanted to save Muingzi, there was nothing he could do. There's still some time. Do you want to go take something else? Muingzi teased. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing hurriedly waved his hand. He had already received Muingzi's lifelong inheritance. If he took anything else, the group of people outside who were persistently attacking the barrier would probably spit out blood from anger when they saw that this place was just an empty shell. Muingzi also knew this. He smiled and shook his head. He took off a green ring from his left hand. With a wave of his sleeve, he put it on Yin Nuashing's hand and said with a smile, All right, this old man's belongings are all with you. Don't think of taking anything else from me. Yin Nuashing curled his lips and muttered in his heart, You're clearly the one who gave it to me. Muingzi saw through his thoughts and laughed loudly, making him feel very awkward. Let's go. Muingzi smiled. He waved his hand and wrapped Yin Nuashing with a green energy. Suddenly being wrapped by the energy, Yin Nuashing felt a wave of energy being emitted from his body. It was as if he was going to be sucked into a space. Senior, take care. Feeling this suction, Yin Nuashing also knew that Muingzi was going to send him out. Before disappearing, Yin Nuashing hurriedly said this. He glanced at Muingzi one last time. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the space. A wave of suction suddenly surged and instantly swallowed Yin Nuashing. Muingzi smiled in relief as he looked at the place where Yin Nuashing disappeared. He raised his head and looked at the pitch-black ancient palace. He pressed his palm against the void, and all the mechanisms in the palace were activated. The sound of energy churning could be heard from the walls. Inside the ancient palace, murderous intents filled the air. Even a God King level character would die if they were to come here. Bang! At the same time, in the sky outside the palace, a crisp sound came from the barrier. It was as if the sky had shattered. The 5 waves of energy were pushed back. The violent energy swept through the heavens and the earth. Some people who were close to the barrier were crushed. They didn't even have time to scream. Charge! The ruins have opened. Chapter 10. The instant the barrier was penetrated, cheers suddenly rang out in the world. It was as if they didn't see the previous miserable situation. Some people couldn't wait to rush towards the shattered barrier. The shattered barrier slowly dissipated in the air. A mountain range suddenly appeared in the empty land. The grand and ancient palace also gradually appeared in everyone's line of sight. When the palace appeared, a desolate and majestic aura descended from the sky. Under that aura, everything was silent. Even people as strong as the purple-clothed man and the others felt a kind of fear from the bottom of their hearts. Not good, retreat quickly. The purple-clothed man's flying figure couldn't be completely stopped for a moment. Just as he rushed into the barrier, he suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. The dense aura of death around him made him shudder. With a loud shout, he rolled up his sleeves and led everyone from the Xian family to retreat to the horizon with all their might. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Leave his place. On the other side, the people from the Fire Divine Palace, Lightning Divine Palace, and the others clearly sensed something. Almost all of their faces surged with fear. At that moment, they let out a strange cry. With a whoosh, they led their people and rushed away with nearly 10 times the speed they came with. When the people who were rushing over saw this, although they didn't know why they were running away, they knew that something bad was about to happen. At that moment, they didn't care about the ruins that were close at hand and hurriedly ran with the 5 great forces. After the barrier dissipated, the space suddenly lit up with many sparks. Looking from afar, even the appearance of the ruins became blurry. If one looked carefully, they would discover that it wasn't the appearance of the ruins that became blurry. Instead, different degrees of distortion appeared in the entire space. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded in the sky. It was as if 10 suns had exploded at the same time. Overflowing energy covered the entire world with a rain of fire that could destroy the world. At that moment, the emerald forest that was close to 10,000 miles away from the ruins was also raised into a flat land with no end in sight. Even the ground had sunk down by several tens of meters. The ground was so flat that there wasn't the slightest obstruction. Those cultivators who couldn't escape in time were directly smashed by the energy and instantly turned into existences akin to dust. Not even a trace of them was left behind. If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see pitch-black cracks spreading out like a spider web with the ruins as the center. Even the clouds in the sky were torn apart by the shock waves. At that moment, the Sourcepeak region seemed to have experienced an earthquake. What brilliant fireworks! Thousands of miles away, Yun Nuoxing stood at the top of a large tree and watched. His eyes were filled with shock. The energy produced by the energy storm made his heart jump even though he was thousands of miles away. His handsome face became much paler, but he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Don't tell me they were all wiped out? Yun Nuoxing patted her rapidly beating chest and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. The violent energy wreaked havoc for dozens of minutes before slowly calming down. In the sky, the pitch-black space and the scattered dark yellow cracks were quietly closing up. The might formed by the 5 of them had long been destroyed. In the center of the mountain range, the palace was like a primordial beast. An ancient and vicissitude of power descended from the sky, covering every inch of land within a radius of 500 kilometers. Many cultivators simply knelt on the ground, unable to resist. Their faces turned purple, and even the divine essence within their bodies was suppressed to the point where they could not move. Just a barrier alone is already so powerful. In the distance, the woman from the Star Palace muttered. Her charming face was completely pale, and there was a dazzling bloodstain on the side of her red lips. Clearly, she did not completely avoid the wave of impact just now and suffered quite a bit of damage. Everyone, do you still want to continue? The purple-golden-robed man laughed dryly. His chest rose and fell unsteadily. The clothes on his body were torn into pieces, and his exposed skin was lacerated. Even the wounds were burnt, and no blood flowed out. Just now, they had taken the lead to charge in and received the strongest impact. However, looking at their calm appearance, they did not seem to have suffered any serious injuries. The master of these ruins must have surpassed Shen Ming when he was alive. No, he must have even been an expert of the underworld king level. We were too careless. The sturdy man from the lightning divine hall frowned and said angrily, although the lightning element was not as fast as the light element, it still swept away the people from the lightning divine hall, fire divine hall, and Xin family in an instant. However, the purple robe man was too close to the ruins. Even if he used speed, he could not escape the fate of being injured. The leader of the fire god shrine, the red-haired man, sighed. He turned around and said to the two of them, quickly return to the shrine and report to them. Ask them to send experts to support us. Something of this level is not something we can touch. The appearance of an underworld king-level ancient ruin could not be concealed. It would definitely shock the entire Sourcepeak region. Soon, more and more sects would dare to come. Among them, there would definitely be many forces comparable to the Divine Hall and the 8 ancient families. The Xin family had no choice but to ask for reinforcements. How about we break into the ancient palace together and take the lead in retrieving the treasure? The people from the Qi family looked at the people from the Xin family, then looked at the Fire Divine Hall and the Lightning Divine Hall. Finally, they asked the people from the Star Palace. We haven't even entered the ruins, and there are already such heavy casualties. Do you think that there are not enough people who have died? The red-haired man frowned. Looking at the empty sky, he felt a bit of sorrow in his heart. Aside from their 5 families, there would not be more than 100 people alive. Furthermore, they did not want to give up on this opportunity. However, they clearly knew that with the strength of their own people, they might not be enough to kill in the ruins. If you're afraid, then you should leave as soon as possible. Just stay on the side and watch us collect the treasure. Hearing the red-haired man's words, the people from the Qi family immediately sneered. I want to see how many of you can come out alive. The red-haired man clenched his teeth and fiercely glared at the people from the Qi family. Then, he led the crowd and retreated far away. The sturdy man from the Lightning Divine Hall looked left and right. He also glared at the people from the Qi family. Then, he brought his people and retreated with the people from the Fire Divine Hall. Brother Qi, let's just forget about today's matter. For something of this level, only the elders of the family can barge in. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The purple-clothed man from the Xian family sighed. He took out a pill and casually threw it into his mouth. Then, he gave him an apologetic smile. Then, he brought his people and retreated in the direction of the 2 divine halls. On the side, the people from the Star Palace also retreated far away. After seeing such a tragic scene, they also did not want to stay here any longer. Only the 20 people from a Qi family remained. Even the loose cultivators chose to leave. They knew that preserving their lives was more important. If they lost their lives, then no matter how precious the things were, they would be meaningless. The people from the Qi family clenched their teeth. They hatefully glared at the 4 forces and unwillingly flew in another direction. Phew! Luckily, they all left. When Yun Nuoxing saw that the crowd had dispersed, he lightly heaved a sigh of relief. He was someone who had walked around the ruins and knew how frightening the series of energy mechanisms inside were. However, he was a little disappointed in his heart. He thought that he would be able to see everyone enter, but after discovering that there was actually nothing very valuable, he flew into a rage. He looked in the direction of the Star Spirit City. This place was actually quite far from the Star Spirit City. Yin Nuoxing flew for half a day with great difficulty before arriving here. The explosion just now did not affect that side, but it definitely attracted the attention of others. Let's go back. That guy should be worried. Inexplicably, he thought of the scene where Yuan put on the jade bracelet for him. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes, sighed, and prepared to return to the Star Spirit City. The people from the Lightning Divine Palace, Fire Divine Palace, and the Xian family walked together. When they passed by Yun Nuoxing, they slowly stopped. The red-haired man looked at Yin Nuoxing in astonishment. He frowned, and his red eyes revealed a puzzled expression. This caused the other 2 to frown as well, and they followed his gaze. Seeing that there were suddenly a few more black figures beside him, Yun Nuashing was startled. He slowly raised his head and saw more than 80 pairs of eyes sizing him up. He was startled for a moment, then cold sweat flowed down his body. He sucked in a breath of cold air. He recognized that these people were 3 of the 5 groups that were leading the 5 groups just now. Oh damn! Seeing that they were sizing him up in a strange manner, Yun Nuashing grimaced and hurriedly jumped down from the tree. When he landed on the ground, he slipped and fell to the ground. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. Be careful! Seeing that Yun Nuashing had fallen, the red-haired man was startled. He threw away the strange thoughts in his mind and hurriedly descended to the ground. He extended his hand to help him up. Mother! Seeing that the shadow was extremely huge, Yun Nuashing, who was lying on the ground, hurriedly turned his head. Seeing that the red-haired man had extended his hand to him, he was so frightened that he spat out his tongue. He let out a weird cry and hurriedly pushed the light element in his body to the limit. He turned into a gorgeous light and disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind the red-haired man who was still in a daze as he extended his hand. Light element. That muscular man from the lightning divine palace chased after him. Seeing that speed that left him in the dust, he was so shocked that his jaw dropped. He muttered, I've seen a ghost. I dare guarantee that I have never seen such a beautiful lady in the light divine palace. In the distance, Yun Nuashing vomited blood. Among the 9 elemental god palaces, the light divine palace had the fewest members. That was because there were very few people who possessed the light element. It was likely that there were less than 100 of them in the entire divine world. That year when the light god created the light divine palace, he was nearly alone. Brother Ardent Fire, what did you see? The violet-robed male stepped forward and watched as Yun Nuashing disappeared into the horizon. Only then did he turn around and ask the red-haired male. That appearance, I seem to have seen it somewhere before. Ardent Fire rubbed his chin. After thinking for a long time, he did not have any clue. He asked the 2 of them, Do you have any impression of her? I didn't even see her clearly before being scared away by you. How do you want me to recognize her? Hearing that, the muscular man rolled his eyes. The moment he came down, Yun Nuashing flew away with all her might. I've never seen her before. I've never heard of such a person in the Star Spirit City. Being able to become a deity, and a deity who possesses the light element. Her name should have shaken the entire region. The violet-robed male shook his head. In this land, those below the initial deity rank could not enter. Thus, he had determined that Yun Nuashing was a deity. He could not help but ask, Brother Ardent Fire, I'm afraid that you have seen wrongly? Could it be that there are hidden existences in the light divine palace? Impossible. Ardent Fire shook his head and answered resolutely. Furthermore, that little lady isn't a deity. She doesn't have any divinity fluctuation. This shouldn't be. In a sunset battlefield, those who aren't deities can't step into it. Hearing that, the muscular man frowned. If she wasn't a deity, how could she step into this region enveloped by divine energy? Hearing that, Ardent Fire nodded his head. This caused the 2 of them to be confused. The former thought for a long time before looking towards the Star Spirit City. He turned his head and said to everyone, I'm going to search the Star Spirit City. You guys wait for the deity's palace's support first. After saying that, without waiting for the 2 of them to reply, he turned into a fiery red shadow and hurriedly chased after Yun Nuashing. Hey, wait for me. Everyone from the lightning divine palace, listen up. Go and search. Seeing Ardent Fire fly away, the muscular man was stunned for a moment. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly instructed and chased after Yun Nuashing. Brother Fire, Brother Thunder. The violet-robed male stretched out his hand. After being stunned for a moment, he turned his head and said, People from the Xian family, go and search as well. After saying that, he also chased after Yun Nuashing. The group of people from the Fire Divine Palace who were riding on strange beasts looked at each other in dismay. After a moment, 2 of them hurriedly flew towards the other side to request for support from the deity's palace. The rest of them scattered and flew towards the Star Spirit City. Boom! East of the Star Spirit City, in the backyard of the Yu family, Yin Nuoxing's head crashed into a tree. Immediately, he felt as if his head was about to be smashed into pieces. As for the tree, under the violent impact, it snapped and fell down together with Yin Nuoxing. So painful, the muffled sound of the impact reverberated in his ears. Yin Nuoxing's face was filled with pain as he sprawled on the ground. His head was in incomparable pain. In just one day, his head had crashed countless times, and he didn't know if it was damaged or not. Unfortunately, using all of his strength to activate the light element was something that his small body couldn't endure. When he arrived at the Yu family, his consciousness was already extremely blurry. If it wasn't for the intense pain that woke him up a little, he would have fainted long ago. If he knew that there was a group of people following behind him, he would probably immediately fly out of the Star Spirit City and leave without looking back. Little brat. From afar, Yu Inu heard the commotion ran over. When she saw Yin Nuoxing sprawled on the ground, she was startled. She hurriedly helped Yin Nuoxing up and looked at him in astonishment. Her jade-like hand was placed on his pulse, and her charming face became even more gloomy. Let me sleep for a while. After being woken up once again, Yin Nuoxing opened his eyes with difficulty. His delicate face was completely pale, and his lively eyes were very dim. After saying that sentence, he completely fainted this time. This made Yu Yin speechless. She hurriedly carried him and ran towards the room. Chapter 11. I'm just a small splash in the eternal river of time. No matter how hard I struggle, I will eventually return to the sea. You're leaving? Will you come back again? I don't know, but do you believe in fate? If our fate hasn't ended, we will definitely meet again in the future. At that time, no, it's nothing. We'll talk about it then. Some images appeared in his mind. On an empty flat ground, there was a small river flowing not far away. Inside the flat ground, there was a long grassy slope. When the breeze blew, the grass rippled and slid into the distance. On the flat ground, a group of people looked nervously at the back of the figure standing at the front. Some of them looked a little gloomy, and their eyes were filled with reluctance. The leader of the group, a young man, walked forward and patted the back of the figure as he muttered, I watched you walk step by step from a most ordinary person to where you are now. It's time for me to leave. There's nothing to be sentimental about. I'm just the most unexpected passerby in your life. To everyone, I'm just one of the people who hurriedly passed by in their lives. Oh, by the way, I've written about you in a diary or a story. If you're interested, you could take a look. Look back on what has happened to you so far. The figure turned around, and his face was covered by his long hair. He took out a thick book from his arms, rubbed it twice, and handed it to the young man. The young man solemnly took it, and then looked up at the figure. Goodbye. The figure turned his head and looked at the people behind the young man. His gaze paused for a moment, and then turned back to the young man. One could vaguely see the corners of his mouth curl up. Puffed. It's a little strange for this sentence to come out of your mouth. You've never left before saying goodbye. The young man couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha, one day, we'll meet again. Yin Nuoxing regained consciousness in the light. When he woke up again, he was lying on the bed. The warm and soft bed made him want to sleep forever. He couldn't help but shrink his body, but he found that he didn't have any strength in his body. The room was filled with a faint fragrance. He looked around in confusion, not knowing where he was. At the last moment before he fainted, he seemed to see Yu Yin. Dream, Yin Nuoxing murmured weakly. He seemed to have had a strange dream just now. That dream felt very real to him, as if it had happened not long ago. However, when he tried to think about it, he could not remember anything else. Even that dream was gradually fading away. Creak! The door slowly opened with a soft sound, and a slender figure carefully walked in. As if she was afraid of disturbing the person on the bed, she didn't make any sound as she walked. He's awake? When the woman walked to the bedside, she noticed that Yin Nuoxing's eyes were slightly open. She paused for a moment, then quickly sat down by the bedside. She pressed her ice-cold hand on his pulse and carefully checked it. The elemental energy in your body has been exhausted. Your vitality has been greatly injured, and your soul energy has been exhausted. Until now, you still haven't recovered. You've been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. What exactly did you do? The red-clothed woman was a little angry as she looked at the boy on the bed in confusion. Just a little. I used all my strength to use the light element. I didn't expect that it would be like this. Hearing the familiar voice, Yin Nuashing sighed and smiled weakly. In the end, it was because he saw the group of people from Fire God Shrine and Lightning God Shrine. If he wasn't scared by him, he wouldn't have run for his life and wouldn't have been so weak that he had to lie down for 7 days. You, in the end, are still a little brat. You don't have any sense of propriety when you do things. You've scared us to death. Your breathing and pulse are so weak that we can't even feel it. If it wasn't for the fact that your body still has some warmth, we would have held a funeral for you. Yu'in rolled her eyes at him. Her jade-like hands were placed on his chest, and strands of warm elemental energy were transferred into Yin Nuashing's body through her jade-like hands. The warm energy entered Yin Nuashing's body and dispersed into his limbs and bones, allowing his ice-cold body to regain some feeling. His stiff fingers were no longer stiff to the point where he couldn't move them. Yin Nuashing smiled apologetically at Yu'in. This feeling of being cared for by someone made him reminisce. It was the same when he was in the Qin family. Thinking of this, he thought of little Yu. He wondered how they were doing. Back then, he said that he was going to return to the Zhu family, but he didn't leave a clear location. He didn't know where to find them in the future. After a long while, Yu'in retracted her hand, pulled the blanket up a little, and said helplessly, "You should just obediently lie down and rest." After saying that, Yu'in stretched out her jade-like fingers and lightly flicked Yin Nuashing's forehead. Then, she slowly got up and walked out. Tilting his head and watching Yu'in leave, Yin Nuashing slowly pulled his hand out of the blanket and placed it on the pendant. He took out a jade bottle, poured out a pill, and threw it into his mouth. These were all given to him by Mu Ingzi before he left. However, he didn't have the time to distinguish what these things were for. The pill turned into a warm current that dissolved in his body when it entered his mouth, causing Yin Nuashing's eyes to light up. A wave of energy spontaneously rose within him, and after 10 minutes, he felt the elemental energy in his body rapidly fill up with elation. As expected of a pill left behind by God, just one pill is enough for me to fully recover. At the late stage of the Pantheon realm, I used all my strength to activate the light element, but it was exhausted in an instant. Yin Nuashing sighed. Although the light element was said to be the fastest, its consumption was probably the fastest as well. Without a certain level of strength, it was impossible to squander such extreme speed. I wonder how the ancient ruins are doing. Is Senior doing well? 7 days had already passed, and the ancient ruins that had appeared should have been tossed around. He just didn't know how the results were, and how many people were angered to the point of vomiting blood. Senior's collection seems to have a lot of incredible things. Yin Nuashing patted the pendant. Thinking about how a god's lifetime collection had fallen into his hands, he felt a little strange. Those people outside had fought with all their might to enter, but he had entered effortlessly with the power of the Nether Void sword. At this moment, he couldn't help but smile. "What are you smiling for? So disgusting." At the door of the room, Yu'in walked in with a tray. Seeing Yin Nuashing smiling foolishly, she stopped in her tracks. Mei Mao looked at him suspiciously, put down the tray on the table, and took his pulse again. Nodding, she said, "You're much better now. Can you get up and eat?" Yin Nuashing nodded. Just as he was about to sit up, he thought of something and pretended to struggle for a long time without moving. Immediately, he winked at Yu'in and said with an embarrassed smile, "You can go out first." Yu'in saw that Yin Nuashing couldn't get up for a long time and laughed. Taking advantage of the fact that he couldn't move, she pinched his cheeks and helped him up. Smiling, she said, "If you can't get up, just say it. Why are you still acting like an outsider? But, come, sister will feed you." Just as Yin Nuashing was about to say something, Yu'in stuffed a bun into his mouth first, making him unable to spit it out or eat it. "Sigh, I'm pretending to be sick. Even if I have to hold back my tears, I have to finish pretending After thinking for a while, Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With a red face, he let Yin finish feeding him. After eating, Yin put Yin Nuoxing back on the bed. Taking out a dark green elixir from her ring, she gently stuffed it into his mouth. Seeing that he swallowed it, she walked out with the tray. She makes me feel like I'm paralyzed. Seeing that Yin left and didn't come back for a long time, Yin Nuoxing finally jumped up and sat cross-legged on the bed. He took out an immortal-grade crystal the size of a fingernail from his pendant and placed it in the air. His hands formed a seal to heal his injuries, and he allowed the 8-colored energy to enter his body and slowly cleanse it. After a long time, the crystal suddenly merged into his glabella. The 8-colored light emitted from his body and dyed the room colorful. The tyrannical energy caused the surrounding space to ripple. The Netherworld Ruins sword was shocked. It hurriedly rushed out of the pendant and shot out threads that connected to his body, absorbing the overflowing energy. After a while, the energy of the crystal slowly faded and the room calmed down. Seeing this, the Netherworld Ruins sword circled around him twice before returning to the pendant. Quasi-Mortal's 6th transformation. Are you kidding? I've been suppressing it with all my might. Yin Nuoxing frowned and muttered, "It seems I can't use these things casually in the future. It won't do me any good to raise my cultivation level too quickly." Using only a fingernail-sized immortal-grade crystal allowed him to raise his cultivation level by an entire level. If he directly refined a large piece, he would probably be able to ascend to the heavens. He didn't know how much energy an immortal-grade crystal contained, so he took it out to test it out. He thought that such a small piece would be enough for him to completely recover, but he didn't expect it to actually help him break through and jump a big step at that. At this time, the Netherworld Ruins sword jumped out and vibrated slightly, trying to express something. "You said there won't be any side effects?" Yin Nuoxing was suspicious. Then he thought of something and couldn't help but murmur, "I heard Uncle Qin say that the faster I pass the mortal stage, the better it will be for my future, but it's definitely boring to directly refine it. I'll keep these for later use." It's decided. After thinking about it, Yin Nuoxing nodded. The Netherworld Ruins sword circled around him twice before returning to the pendant. "I don't know why those people are looking for me. I don't know them." Thinking about what happened 7 days ago, Yin Nuoxing suddenly had a lot of questions. He didn't know what kind of power those 3 groups of people were from, nor did he know when he got involved with them. Could it be that they know I entered the ruins? He muttered and then shook his head. The barrier could cover the sky and the sun. Not even a trace of energy could leak out, let alone see him come out. Muingzi had personally sent him out, so it was impossible for him to be seen. Yin Nuoxing rolled off the bed and went out through the window. He gently floated to the roof and looked up at the starry sky. Once he entered the quasi-mortal stage, he had the ability to use the wind element to float in the sky for a while and walk for a certain distance. If he wanted to truly fly in the sky and control the wind element to dance in the sky, he had to have the strength of the mortal stage. Although it was only a difference of 1 word, it was actually a world of difference. Only when he stepped into the mortal stage could his cultivation journey truly begin. The Netherworld Ruins sword moved according to his will. It flew out of the pendant and floated in front of him. Yin Nuoxing reached out to grab it and was about to pull it out of the scabbard. Suddenly, it exploded with a strong light. It quickly shook off his hand and retreated, as if it was very afraid of his actions. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at it, not knowing what was going on. Chapter 12. The Netherworld Ruin sword flew back to Yin Nuoxing's side and made some gestures with great effort. Then, it used its divine sense to explain the situation to him. "You're saying that the Netherworld Ruin sword can't be unsheathed? Why?" Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and asked in confusion. The Netherworld Ruin sword vibrated as if it wanted to express something anxiously. It rapidly circled around him, but it couldn't say anything. "You subconsciously feel that it can't be unsheathed? Yin Nuashing rubbed his dizzy head and tried to translate the sword. Hum. The netherworld ruined sword made a crisp sound, as if it was confirming something. What? Yin Nuashing frowned and scratched his head in confusion. How could it be used if it couldn't be unsheathed? Was it supposed to be used together with the scabbard? You really want me to use the scabbard? Yin Nuashing was speechless. Okay. I want to unsheath it. Okay. You can't unsheath it unless you have no other choice. What do you want me to do? Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. After arguing on the rooftop for a long time, the netherworld ruin sword finally flew back to Yin Nuashing's hand in satisfaction. A faint purple light lingered around the sword, and one could almost feel its emotional fluctuations. How good would it be if you had your memories? Yin Nuashing sighed. He didn't even have any clues to his origins. His only hope was the giant sword that had appeared with him, the pendant in front of his chest, and that blurry memory. However, he had already rejected one of the three. The pendant didn't have any spirituality and was only a spatial artifact used to store things. This eliminated another condition. Now all that was left was that memory. The towering ancient trees blotted out the sky, and their dazzling light was like a rainbow, illuminating the sky beautifully. Every time she thought about it, her head would hurt so much that it felt like it was being torn apart. Yin Nuashing had a pained expression on her face. She quickly gave up on thinking about it and sighed. How far could she go with a vague memory? Patting her aching head, Yin Nuashing stood up, weighed the Netherruin sword in her hand, and casually swung it a few times. Holding the sword in her right hand, her body danced under the scarlet moonlight. Wherever the sword passed, the leaves were silently cut open. The long sword drew a beautiful arc in the air. The purplish-red light made him look very ethereal, hazy like a dream, ethereal and out of this world. Sword flowers bloomed under the moonlight, graceful and gentle. His light movements did not make any sound, as if he could ride the wind and fly away at any time to become an immortal. If he didn't point out himself, it was likely that everyone would think that a fairy was dancing on the roof. She had sparkling white skin, red lips, and white teeth. Her ink-black hair danced with her windbreaker. Her eyes were slightly narrowed, and her blurred appearance made people's hearts palpitate. Phew! Yin Nuashing gently exhaled. Her narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and a sharp aura rose from the ground. Her slender eyebrows were raised, and she grabbed the Netherruin sword with both hands. She swung it up and down, and it was like a stormy sea with an irresistible force. Evil winds howled, and ghosts and gods cried. Her sword techniques were like layers upon layers of waves. Her wild aura matched with the curve of her lips, and she was extremely domineering. At this moment, it was as if she was the ruler of the world, and nothing could stop her. Her style changed too quickly. Yin was hiding in a dark corner not far away, and she was secretly watching. She had seen Yin Nuashing dancing like a fairy when she had just come up, and she was watching with interest. Who would have thought that in the next moment, she would become wild and unrestrained? It was so fast that she couldn't react. After a long while, Yin Nuashing suddenly stopped. The Netherruin sword stopped at her will, and the many illusions also disappeared in an instant. Her body remained in the posture of the giant, sword slashing downwards. The light in Yin Nuashing's eyes slowly faded, and in an instant, they returned to a pair of clear eyes. She slowly straightened her body, and her chest rose and fell gently as she stretched her body. Little brat! Yin suddenly jumped out from the side, and her jade-like hand slapped him on the shoulder as she shouted in shock. Ghost! Yin Nuashing's body trembled violently, and goosebumps appeared on every corner of his body. His heart suddenly stopped for a moment, and he was so scared that he jumped off the building and fled. Yin was stunned for a moment, and her beautiful face was a little strange. She didn't expect such a big reaction from him, and she couldn't help but laugh. Head. A few minutes later, Yin Nuashing jumped up from downstairs with a gloomy face. His appearance of gnashing his teeth made Yin's smile widen. However, he looked like he was only 14 or 15 years old, and Yu Yin's real age was only around 20 years old. When he said this, it made him sound like an old man. Ahaha, I'm older than you, so you have to call me big sister. Yu Yin laughed as she pulled him over, and her jade-like hand scratched his head as she laughed. Yin Nuashing pushed her away with a red face, and asked in embarrassment and annoyance, "What's the matter? From today onwards, your time belongs to me." Yu Yin smoothed out the black hair in front of her forehead, and smiled as she stuck out her pink tongue. Yin Nuashing was taken aback. Fire Cloud Palace was a faction in the east of Star Soul City. All of its disciples possessed the fire element, and it was considered rather famous in the entire Star Soul City. It was a faction of the Fire God Temple that was located in the northwest of the Source Peak region. They were the ones who quickly reported the appearance of the ancient ruins, allowing the latter to be the first to rush over from the Divine Continent. Otherwise, if they were to wait for the news to reach the Divine Continent before coming over, they wouldn't even have a hair left. And after the storm of the ancient ruins, Fire Cloud Palace had calmed down. The outside world had also regained its peace, leaving behind a few behemoth-like factions to constantly explore. Who the F***CK is so wicked as to leave an empty palace to scare people? Why the F***CK did they have to create such a powerful barrier? F***CK, the ruins are empty. There isn't even a dog inside. F***CK your mother. Who is it that saw the ruins and released the news? Step forward, and I guarantee that I won't beat you to death. Hey, bastard, come over here. F***CK, back when the ruins were opened, you were the one who blew me up. Now I want to settle the score. Of course, although the storm had passed, the effects it left behind were not trivial. Rumor had it that the first major faction to charge in, the chief family of the 8 ancient family clans, rummaged through more than half of the palace, but failed to find anything. They were so infuriated that they nearly flipped the palace over, but they were eventually chased out by a mechanism in the palace. Yin Nuashing was somewhat surprised. When he entered, it was still intact. Could it be that someone had secretly snuck into the ruins like him? As for the Fire God Temple, Lightning God Temple, Shin family, and Star Palace that had yet to enter, they could not help but roar with laughter when they saw the chief family rolling out in a sorry state without leaving behind any mounts. It infuriated the chief family so much that they spat out a mouthful of blood and left without turning back. When the 4 factions saw this, they decisively retreated, leaving a few itinerant cultivators standing in their spots. Hey kid, did you enter the ruins that day? What was it like inside? Yu Yin and Yin Nuashing stood on the Netheruin sword as they streaked across the horizon. As for Yu Yin, she was hugging Yin Nuashing tightly, afraid that she would accidentally fall. When was it my turn to enter? That day, they nearly killed me when they cracked the enchantment. I only took a glance from afar before retreating. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes as he struggled gently in Yu Yin's embrace. Really? Yu Yin was doubtful. I'm not lying to you. Yin Nuashing held his head up, but he was grumbling inwardly. It would be strange if I told you that. If the outside world were to know that I had inherited Mu Ingzi's lifelong heritage, I would probably be skinned alive. Speaking of which, why are we going to Fire Cloud Palace? Yin Nuashing hurriedly changed the topic, afraid that she would continue probing. I'm a disciple there. I came out on a small vacation, so it's time for me to return. Wait, you wanted to accompany you? Could it be? Yeah, I want you to accompany me for a few days or months. Yin Nuashing screamed, nearly throwing them off the Netheruin sword. Kid, you won't grow up if you keep making a fuss over nothing. Yu Yin pinched his tender cheeks. No, want. A meteor streaked across the horizon, filled with horrified screams. Floating outside a mountain range, Yu Yin stopped him. She took out a fiery red token from her ring. On it was written the word fire in flamboyant calligraphy. She held the token in her hand and gently placed it on the void in front of her. A blazing flame emanated out as the light expanded. The space in front of her began to ripple like water. Space gently fluctuated as a spatial tunnel slowly appeared in front of them. Yun Nuashing was taken aback as he reluctantly flew in with his sword. And with him entering, the spatial door dissipated into nothingness once again. A world of its own. As soon as he entered, Yun Nuashing felt that the air had become much hotter. The fire element in his body immediately became active, and the rolling hot energy continuously surged into his body, causing his newly stabilized strength to have a tendency to increase again. This is a superior faction of Fire Cloud Palace, the Fire God Temple. It's about the size of a city, but it's very well hidden. If not for some special method, even experts at the godly monarch level would not be able to find this place, explained Yu'in with a nod. Screech. Not long after Yun Nuashing appeared in the sky, there was a screech from afar. A few gigantic firebirds tore through space and flew over. There was a person standing on each of their backs as they looked warily in their direction. Eenie, the red-dressed woman leading the group, cried out in delight. She stopped in front of Yu'in and Yun Nuashing on her firebird. You're back. Did you enjoy your vacation? Is this sword kinesis flight? Where did you learn it? Hey, is this your sister? She's so cute. How old is she? Does she have a boyfriend? Do you have a Dao companion? Where did you go during your vacation? Did you bring back any specialties? Is there anything for me? The red-dressed woman seemed very excited as she kept talking to Yu'in. Are you trying to choke me to death by asking so many questions at once? Yu'in covered Yun Nuashing's mouth and shook her head helplessly. Junior sister Yu, introduce your sister to us. The few youths behind the red-dressed woman stared at Yu'in and Yun Nuashing as they said with a smile. Yun Nuashing closed her eyes and did not say a word for once. It was as though she was silently admitting to it. Don't laugh at her. My sister is afraid of strangers. Shinran, bring us to the Grand Elder first. Yu'in waved her hand and said to the red-dressed woman. All right. Shinran smiled faintly and dismissed the crowd with a wave of her hand. She led Yu'in and Yun Nuashing to the side, leaving behind looks of anticipation. Little sister, what's your name? How old are you? I've never seen you in the Yu family before. What's your relationship with Yu'in? Are you your cousin? Along the way, Shinran pulled Yun Nuashing and asked incessantly. Yu'in, who was standing on the Netherworld Ruin Sword, was a little scared. She was afraid that Yun Nuashing would suddenly attack her. Her jade-like hands tightly held onto her arm. Yun Nuashing glanced at her and turned to look at Shinran. She imitated a crisp and soft female voice and said, My name is Uxin. I'm 16 years old this year. Yu'in is my older sister. We don't usually live together. This year, I came to play with her. PFFF. When Yu'in heard this, she spat out a mouthful of saliva. She covered her rosy little mouth with her jade-like hands. She wanted to laugh, but was holding it in. Her delicate face looked very funny. Yun Nuashing elbowed her lower abdomen. She glanced to the side and did not say anything. When Shinran heard this, she excitedly touched his face and muttered to herself in delight. Why is your friend so strange? Seeing Shinran trembling with laughter, Yun Nuashing could not help but send a voice transmission to her. It was unknown what she was thinking of. Aha! Yu'in stroked her head and laughed awkwardly. She said, Sister Yu, you have to be careful in Fire Cloud Palace. We have far fewer girls than boys. With your beauty that can topple countries and outshine the moon, you will be snatched by many boys. That's enough from you. Yun Nuashing sighed and rolled his eyes at her. After crossing layers of fiery red mountain ranges, violent volcanoes, and scorching deserts, Yun Nuashing finally could not help but ask, Why is it so far? I already said that it's about the size of a city. From the entrance to the core region, it's equivalent to flying from the east to the west. How can it not be far? The light elements will be depleted in one go. Yun Nuashing mumbled. He could only push the light elements to their limits in an instant, allowing him to approach the speed of light for a short period of time. However, he would be completely drained. I won't be carrying you back, said Yu'in with a smile. You are so ruthless. After flying at high speeds for nearly 5 hours, a red palace the size of a mountain finally rose from the distant horizon. At a glance, it made one's blood boil. I suddenly have something to say. Suddenly, Yuin seemed to think of something as she turned her head. Mei Mao stared at Shinran and asked curiously, "Why do we have to fly so far? Where's the teleportation portal?" "Ah!" Shinran exclaimed as she scratched her silky hair in embarrassment. She lowered her head and said, "Well, I ruined it." "What?" Yuin was shocked. "Ah, the last time I was carrying an energy source when I was traveling, I wasn't careful." Shinran turned her head away with a red face and stuttered. "You blew it up, right?" Yuin rubbed her smooth forehead, not knowing what to say. "How many times has it been already?" She couldn't help but scold. "How many times have I told you? You can't, I know. Amen, I'll be more careful next time." Shinran was afraid that she would continue and quickly nodded. "There will be a next time. What exactly do you want me to do?" Yin Nuashing transmitted his voice to Yuin as he looked at the approaching palace. "There's something I need your help to activate. You'll know when we get there." Yuin rubbed his head and smiled. "What is it?" Yin Nuashing asked. "A mysterious magical tool." Yuin shook her head mysteriously to keep him in suspense. Yin Nuashing knitted his brows and snorted lightly. He stared at the palace and didn't say anything else. In the distant palace, an old man with red hair and a red beard stood at the edge. His fiery red eyes pierced through space and directly saw Yun Nuashing and the others in the distant horizon. His gaze was locked on him for a long time before he slowly nodded and turned around to walk into the main hall. "The final requirements have been gathered. It's about time to start. Old Four, quickly go and prepare." The old man's voice reverberated in the main hall. A group of people dressed in fiery red clothes hurriedly retreated when they heard this. They then methodically arranged something. The old man only turned around when he saw the crowd disperse. He continued to look at Yin Nuashing with undisguised envy in his eyes. "Light element. He's really an enviable kid." Chapter 13. The fire element here has already reached a very high level. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and was slightly delighted. The hot air entered his body through his nose, and the surging energy made all the cells in his body cheer in joy. Cultivating here will definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself as he licked his lips. "What, little brat, are you tempted?" Yuin noticed his expression and couldn't help but smile. "Let me tell you first, under normal circumstances, people who aren't elders aren't allowed to enter this place. No matter how talented you are, you can only obediently sit outside and meditate." Yin's tone was somewhat regretful. "Ah, isn't the treatment given to those old men too high?" Yin Nuashing stuck out his tongue. He thought that anyone could enter this place to cultivate. That way, he would be able to sit down and borrow it for a while. "You're thinking too much, aren't you?" Yuin knew what he was thinking, so she knocked his head. Yin Nuashing mumbled, "We might need your light element in a while, so you should prepare first. I haven't agreed to help you yet." Yin Nuashing muttered unhappily. "Information about the teleportation gate." Yuin smiled slyly. Yin Nuashing was silent for a long time. Then he glared at her and said, "You're ruthless. All right, just help your elder sister this one time." Yuin smiled and licked her red lips with her dark red tongue. Then she moved her little mouth close to his ear and said softly. There was a hint of pleading in her words. This scene was exceptionally alluring. Yin Nuashing shuddered and hurriedly said, "I know. I'll help. I'll help, all right? So don't come so close." The three of them landed below the palace. The huge firebird flew to one side, and Yin Nuashing put away the netherworld ruin sword. "Little sister Xin, can you teach your elder sister how to fly on a sword?" Seeing this scene, Shinran stretched her fair face in front of Yin Nuashing and said fawningly, "Let's talk about it when we have time." Yin Nuashing jumped back and answered vaguely, "Love-struck fool, let's go." Yuin dragged Xin, ran into the hall with a dark expression. Yin Nuashing shrugged and slowly followed behind them. Inside the ancient palace, huge stone pillars seemed to be supporting the heaven and earth. Lines of runes covered the entire palace, extending from the pillars all the way down to the huge formation on the floor. Blazing energy was spreading out from the formation like waves of water. A head-sized golden magic tool floated above the formation eye. It emitted a faint glow, isolating the surrounding blazing energy. Around the formation were many Fire Cloud Palace elders sitting cross-legged. Wisps of energy flowed out from their bodies and surged into the massive formation in front of them. On the innermost staircase of the palace, a red-haired elder stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were fixed intently on the massive formation. Only when Yin Nuoxing and company entered did he shift his gaze away from the formation and look at them. Then he nodded at them. Upon seeing the red-haired elder nod, Shinran turned her head and beckoned to Yin Nuoxing. Then she walked straight to the staircase and bowed to the red-haired elder. She said reverently, "Grand Elder." "Yeah." The Grand Elder nodded. He turned his gaze and looked at Yin Nuoxing. His burning eyes flashed a look of surprise. After a moment, he said, "You are that young girl who possesses the light elements." "Yeah." A dark cloud hung over Yin Nuoxing's face. When she saw the Grand Elder hesitate for a moment, she knew that he was doing it on purpose. When Shinran heard the Grand Elder's words, she immediately widened her eyes in astonishment. She hurriedly looked at Yin Nuoxing with a look of incredulity. If not for the odd atmosphere, she would have probably lunged forward to question her. She had never seen anyone possess the legendary light elements from the moment she was born. "Time is of the essence. I won't say much." The Great Elder nodded. He closed his eyes and tapped his temple with his finger. Then he slowly pulled out a silver-white thread. After pulling out the thread, the Grand Elder slowly opened his eyes. He twirled the thread a few times with his finger and rolled it into a ball. Then he pointed his finger that was wrapped with the thread at Yin Nuoxing's head. When the aged finger tapped on Yin Nuoxing's head, the thread on his finger fused into his mind, leaving him stunned. Just as he was about to say something, a memory that did not belong to him surfaced in his mind. The sudden memory made Yin Nuoxing widen her eyes. When she saw the Grand Elder's solemn expression, she ignored everything else and hurriedly calmed herself down to watch. However, her brows furrowed deeper as the memory played back. After a long while, Yin Nuoxing said solemnly, "What a dangerous item." In the memory fragment, a group of people attempted to forcefully open the resplendent artifact. However, due to the lack of the light elements, the forceful attempt resulted in a pure light elemental energy counterattack. It caused quite a bit of damage, flattening a few mountain ranges. The instantaneous energy was in no way inferior to the full-powered strike of Goddark expert. The Fire Cloud Palace Elder, who was helpless against it, could only choose to seal it and conceal its traces, waiting for someone with the light elements to open it. It was not that they had not thought of using the Fire God Temple to seek out the people from the Light God Temple, but with the Light God Temple in seclusion, it was unknown when they would meet again. It would be very difficult to find them before then, so they put the matter aside. And there were other fragments in the memory that told him how to safely open the artifact. What's the use of this light divine artifact? Yin Nuoxing frowned. "Follow me." The Grand Elder sighed and looked at him. He took the lead to walk into the pitch-black passageway behind him. Behind him, Yin Nuoxing and company exchanged looks before hurriedly following. The passageway was extremely silent. Only the rustling of footsteps could be heard. The walls of the passageway were embedded with bright crystals that illuminated the passageway with hazy light. Yin Nuoxing's gaze inadvertently swept across the Grand Elder, who was leading the way. Then he turned to look at Yuan, who had a smile hanging on her face. He felt a little nervous. It could be said that he did not know any of the three people in the passageway completely. Mei Mao caught a glimpse of Yin Nuoxing's frown. As though sensing his nervousness, Yuan gently patted him on the head before shaking her head with a smile. She said with a voice transmission, "Kid, relax." Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. However, he gradually relaxed as his heavy footsteps became a lot lighter. After walking for about 10 minutes in the passageway, a blinding light finally appeared at the end of the passageway. And upon seeing the light, the few people in the passageway quickened their pace. Moments later, they finally arrived at the end of the passageway and took a step forward. The blinding light sprinkled down from the sky, causing Yun Nuashing and company to hurriedly close their eyes. After a long while, they slowly opened their eyes. They were a little shocked when they saw the scene that appeared in front of them. At this moment, there was a vast grassland in front of Yun Nuashing and company. It was surrounded by blue skies and white clouds. Not far in front of them was an extremely large lake. The lake extended all the way until the end of their line of sight. In the middle of the calm lake, there was a gigantic iron pillar that was so huge that it made people speechless. Yun Nuashing's gaze slowly rested on the iron pillar that was suffused with a metallic luster. Although it was called an iron pillar, it was more appropriate to call it an iron tower. They looked from bottom to top until their line of sight was perpendicular to the ground, but they still couldn't see the top of the huge iron tower. Wisps of ancient aura came from the distant horizon, causing Yun Nuashing to involuntarily gulp. This is the pillar of creation. We don't know exactly what it is, but under the orders of our ancestor, we have been guarding this place and waiting for a person to return. Before that person returns, it has to be sealed. After dozens of eras, the seal that our ancestor set up has a flaw. It's missing the most important element of light. We can't just rely on the meager amount of energy of heaven and earth to make up for it. Therefore, we found this divine artifact to reactivate the part of the seal dominated by the element of light. The pillar of creation. Yun Nuashing asked. Yes, but we still don't know what it is after studying it for so many years. We're just following orders to guard it. What will happen if it's not sealed in time? Yun asked. It said. The great elder rubbed his forehead. After thinking for a moment, he said, It should cause the entire Sourcepeak region to collapse. Hiss. After hesitating for a while, Yun Nuashing and the other two sucked in a breath of cold air. It's not that easy to break it. Even if there's no light element, there are still other elemental formations. Losing one formation will only cause the seal to loosen a little faster. After all, it was personally set up by the founder, so it's very sturdy. The great elder glanced at the three of them and calmly comforted them. Yun Nuashing patted her chest. After thinking about it, she also felt that this was the case. The seal had only loosened a little after dozens of eras, so it shouldn't be broken so quickly. It's fine as long as there's light element? Yun Nuashing asked. Yes, but you have too little light element. It's not enough to repair the seal of the pillar of creation, so you need to undo the seal of the light divine tool and use it to strengthen the seal. The great elder nodded. If the people of the Temple of Light were to come, this seal would be easily undone with a wave of their hand. All right, I'll do my best. Yun Nuashing sighed. This was a matter that concerned the entire Sourcepeak region. She couldn't ignore it even if she wanted to. Although, by the time the seal was automatically undone, they might have already turned into dust. When Yun Nuashing and the other three returned to the fiery hall, several other huge formations had already been set up in the hall. They covered the ceiling and the ground of the hall. Blazing energy reverberated in this space, illuminating it with a fiery red light. TSK, TSK. Yun Nuashing couldn't help but click her tongue in praise after taking a few glances. Apart from a formation master, no one else could open and maintain these huge formations at the same time. Just as Yun Nuashing was surprised, a young-looking person ran over and reported, Great Elder, it's ready. Do you want to wake up the leader? If you can wake him up, then wake him up. We'll wait here for a while. The great elder nodded. That person also ran over to the other side of the hall. Little girl, you just have to enter the formation later and use the method I taught you to output light element. The formation will take care of the energy burden for you. No matter how much energy it takes, we can handle it. The great elder turned to look at Yun Nuashing and reminded her. All right. Yun Nuashing nodded in agreement. Then, she quietly operated her evil spirit eye and stared unblinkingly at the many formations that covered the entire hall. This formation is sucking in all the energy of the world and forcibly locking it in this formation. Even the spiritual energy of the dragon vein is being drawn in the superposition of 18 formations. If it wasn't for the large consumption of light element, I would definitely be stuffed to death. However, the energy here is all fire elemental. Those arrays can transform the fire elemental energy into non-elemental energy. Yin looked up from the bottom. With the help of the evil spirit eyes characteristics, he was able to see the functions of those arrays. Just as his gaze moved to the top, he was suddenly stunned. The evil spirit eye stared blankly at the array at the top. Elemental conversion. In the small formation at the top, the fiery red element quietly turned into a brilliant gold as it passed through the formation. It was only a little bit faint, but it seemed to be able to illuminate the entire hall. What a big move. I wonder if I can use my evil spirit eye to analyze and learn the elemental conversion. Yin gently rubbed his 2 fingers. Now is not the time to unseal the light divine tool. His thoughts were focused on the array. He had a total of 4 elements in his body, but the light element was the most abundant. The other 3 elements were much less. If he could inscribe this array, he would be able to use the other 3 elements at will. Chapter 14. Young Lady. Just as Yin was immersed in observing the array, a young voice suddenly pulled him back to reality. It gave him such a fright that he immediately closed his evil spirit eye before turning his gaze to the side. Beside Yin there was a man in red who had appeared out of nowhere. His light red hair was casually draped over his chest and back, and his pitch-black eyes were burning with flames from time to time. His slightly sharp chin was slightly lowered, and his delicate and pretty face had a faint smile, which made people have a good impression of him. Sectmaster. The Grand Elder bowed slightly at the young man who had suddenly appeared beside him. This is the Sectmaster? He looks even younger than my father. Yui mumbled into Yin ear. She had never seen the Fire Cloud Palace's Sectmaster before and never expected him to be such a young man. Heh. With the Fire Cloud Palace's Sectmaster strength, he naturally heard her. He looked at Yui and chuckled. People at their level had lifespans hundreds of times longer than ordinary people. Even old monsters that had lived for a long time might only be a young man. Blinking his eyes, Yin looked at the ridiculously young Sectmaster. Just like the Grand Elder, he could not tell the duo's strength. Their bodies were flowing with a baffling luster that blocked the prying of the evil spirit eye. However, since he could become the leader of a sect and be famous in a region, he was likely an expert at the god level. Yin stared at the Sectmaster with widened eyes. He opened his mouth and produced a weak sound from his throat. However, he did not know how to address him. His mind spasmed as he shouted, "Hello, Uncle Pua." The Grand Elder, who was watching the array in the hall, spat out a mouthful of water. Shinran and Yu staggered and nearly fell to the ground. They lampooned inwardly. "Uncle, your sister. Who knows how long this fellow has lived? He's more than enough to be your ancestor, yet you call him uncle." When the sect leader heard this, his face twitched violently. After a while, he let out a bitter laugh and waved his hand. He was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "Little girl, if you are ready, then enter the formation. We will do our best to protect you." Yin nodded awkwardly. He had blurted out the way he had addressed her. After all, he didn't know what to call her. Nodding his head, the soles of his feet lightly touched the ground. His body agilely leapt up and slowly landed in the eye of the array. The jade bracelet on his left hand suddenly emitted a pure white light that enveloped Yin, isolating her from the scorching heat in the surroundings. This caused him to be somewhat astonished. When he was in the ruins, this bracelet had also lit up, but he was still unable to see what material it was made of, regardless of whether he used his evil spirit essence or not. After being astonished for a while, Yin shifted her gaze and looked at the light divine tool that was close by. The so-called divine tool was a mirror. Its bronze frame was engraved with complicated patterns. The entire mirror was resplendent in gold. A vast amount of light energy flowed within this head-sized mirror. The energy that leaked out made even Yun Nuoxing, who also possessed the light element, feel apprehensive. Using his evil spirit essence, he could see many azure veined patterns engraved on the surface of the mirror. Tens of thousands of veined patterns extended from the center of the mirror. If he looked carefully, he could see that there was a ring of gray energy that blocked the energy transmission of the veined patterns. After looking at the Grand Elder's memories, Yun Nuoxing also understood that the so-called unsealing was to eliminate that ring of gray energy. If the energy contained within explodes, I'm afraid I won't even have a corpse left. Imagining the worst-case scenario, Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but shiver. She hurriedly took out the nether void sword from her pendant, weighed it in her hand, and hung it on her back. This is? Fire Cloud Palace's sect master looked at the purplish-black, gigantic sword and was slightly taken aback. He carefully sized up the gigantic sword as his narrowed eyes flashed a heavy look. Similarly, the Grand Elder wore a heavy expression. He could clearly sense that the moment the nether void sword appeared, the entire array's energy stirred. However, it quickly calmed down. However, the tiny fluctuation did not escape their perception. They instinctively felt that it was no ordinary item. "Sect Master, do you recognize this sword?" asked the Grand Elder out of curiosity when he heard the Sect Master's muttering. "I don't." The Sect Master shook his head and said, "I only have a feeling that the sword contains an extremely terrifying energy. However, I feel like it's incomplete." Yun Nuoxing did not hear what they were saying. He was focusing his mind as all the essence energy in his body surged rapidly. He was even stirring the pure energy around him. As he had fire elements in his body, the surrounding energy drilled into his body without him needing to deliberately stir it. The purified, non-elemental energy also surged into his body with the fire elements. The feeling of being filled with energy made Yun Nuoxing have the urge to engage in a great battle. As for the elders who were waiting outside the array, they didn't know of this. They thought that Yun Nuoxing was accumulating strength. Putting his palms together, Yun Nuoxing's mind stirred. Faint light elements surged out from his palms and slowly extended out with Yun Nuoxing's will. His mind was constantly replaying the construction process of the array formation in his memories as he stirred the light elements to draw on his palms. This child perception is not bad. Seeing Yun Nuoxing make his move, the sect master and the others were silent. The Grand Elder looked at Yun Nuoxing's slow but precise construction of the array formation in his palms and couldn't help but nod his head. His voice carried a hint of praise. If he is properly nurtured, he might be able to become an array master. This kind of thing is rare nowadays. The sect master also smiled. The array formation in the main hall was completely constructed by one person. The others were only maintaining the array formation's energy consumption. Even for them, if they wanted to activate the array formation, they had to use the array diagram. Phew! 10 minutes later, Yun Nuoxing let out a sigh of relief. He slowly opened his closed eyes and lowered his head to look at the palm-sized array formation with exaggerated patterns. He nodded in his heart. With a wave of his hand, the array formation left his hand and flew in front of the mirror. Yun Nuoxing's hand seal changed, and the array formation gradually enlarged. When it was the same size as the mirror, it slowly moved forward and enveloped the mirror. Swallowing his saliva, Yun Nuoxing's right hand surged with resplendent light elements. The light elements hovered for a while before transforming into a thin needle. It approached the array formation bit by bit. After lightly touching it a few times, it plunged into the array formation's eye. Then, Yun Nuoxing's will follow this strand of light elements into the mirror. With his eyes tightly closed, Yun Nuoxing controlled the light element from afar and poured them into the array formation. Feeling the rapidly fading origin energy in his body, he couldn't help but frown. His soul mobilized the rich energy in the array formation. He first refined it in his body before sending it into the array formation. Seeing that his mind was connected to the divine weapon of light, the great elder couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. His eyes were fixed on the mirror that was only the size of a head. Previously, they couldn't connect to the divine weapon of light and forcefully opened it and suffered a backlash. This time, seeing everyone's serious expression, Yuan couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Mei Mao stared nervously at Yin Nuoxing. Yuan, you guys go out first. We'll take care of things here. The bishop looked at Yuan and said softly. Hearing this, Yuan shook her head and said softly, I brought him here. I want to stay and take care of him. Seeing Yu Yin's stubborn look, the bishop sighed and nodded lightly. He was actually afraid that he wouldn't be able to take care of these two girls when the divine weapon of light backfired. With Yu Yin and Xin Ran's current strength, they would be turned into ashes if they came into contact with the energy. Looking at the blocked energy patterns in the mirror, Yin Nuoxing frowned. He quietly observed for half an hour before taking action. His mind methodically controlled the flow of light elements in the patterns. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing was facing a great enemy, the nether void sword emitted a wave of energy that calmed his tense soul. The light elements slowly flowed in the mirror. Seeing that nothing unexpected happened, everyone let out a sigh of relief. However, they still paid close attention to the situation inside the array. If anything went wrong, they would immediately take action. However, after everyone paid close attention to it for a while, nothing out of the ordinary happened, causing the nervousness in everyone's heart to slowly dissipate. The light essence smoothly entered the mirror, and as if a lock had been unlocked, a caw-caw sound could be heard. The great elder couldn't help but take a deep breath. He knew that the divine artifact was slowly being unsealed. It seems that it's only a matter of time before the divine weapon is activated. The bishop nodded, and a gentle smile appeared on his tense face. He said to the great elder and the others, This young girl, I'll leave her in your care. I'll go back and continue my seclusion. Call me when it's time to confer the divine weapon of light. After saying that, he didn't wait for anyone to reply and directly disappeared, leaving behind the great elder with a bitter smile. Yuan was still worried for a long time. After observing for a while and seeing that nothing unexpected happened, she relaxed and sat cross-legged on the spot, waiting for Yin Nuoxing to wake up. Seeing that Yuan hadn't left, she could only suppress the thought of running away and sit cross-legged. Why do I feel a sense of familiarity? Yin Nuoxing frowned. That mirror seemed to have formed some kind of invisible connection with him. It wasn't the kind of connection that appeared out of nowhere, but the kind that seemed to have just awakened. It was a connection that felt like seeing an acquaintance. Could it be that this mirror has something to do with me? Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. What exactly did he do in the past? At the same time, he also had some hope in his heart. He hoped that he could obtain some information about himself from this mirror. He was becoming more and more curious about his past. No, it's the light elements. After letting his imagination run wild for a long time, Yin Nuoxing was disappointed to find that the so-called familiarity was only the connection between the elements. He couldn't help but sigh. He thought that he could obtain some useful information from this mirror. After muttering to himself for a while, Yin Nuoxing also stopped letting his imagination run wild. He slowly refined that circle of gray energy. The speed was so slow that he wanted to curse. He still needed to wait for a long time to fully activate this artifact. After all, rice had to be eaten mouthful by mouthful, and the road had to be taken step by step. No one expected to succeed in one go. Now that he had a good start, he just needed to wait slowly. However, Yin Nuoxing's temperament made him endure. This was a matter of life and death. Fortunately, he steeled his heart and endured it, slowly refining that bit of gray energy. And this wait lasted for half a month. During this half a month, Yin Nuoxing didn't have the slightest bit of rest. The soul-burning technique was constantly in operation, constantly absorbing the energy in the large array, and then continuously transferring it into the small golden array. Of course, he couldn't keep this up forever. Even though there was unlimited energy outside his body for him to use, in the later stages, the energy output from his palm began to be intermittent. The speed of absorption obviously couldn't keep up with the speed of consumption. A thick layer of dark circles appeared under his eyes, and his raised palm was trembling. Clearly, his spirit was reaching its limit. Shaking his head vigorously, Yin Nuashing gasped for a few breaths. Absent-mindedly, he took out an 8-colored energy crystal the size of a thumb from his pendant. The sudden energy fluctuation made the great elder, who had his eyes closed, suddenly open his eyes. When he saw the 8-colored crystal, he couldn't help but be stunned. Just as he was about to shout, Yin Nuashing had already stuffed the crystal into his glabella. Boom! The wild energy was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins, rushing through his meridians with all its might, causing Yin Nuashing's meridians to swell with pain. The soul between his eyebrows had a tendency to swell, and his tired mind instantly perked up. Oh, damn it! However, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but slap himself in the face when he saw the boundless energy. He had forgotten that this energy had allowed him to soar by an entire stage. Now, he had thrown it in again. Yin Nuashing laughed bitterly. He desperately drove the energy out from every corner of his body, and then poured it into the array. Even so, the replenishment speed of the energy was several times faster than the consumption speed. Suppress. Fortunately, the elders outside the array had been paying close attention to the situation inside the array. When Yin Nuashing acted recklessly, they hurriedly controlled the array that was suspended in midair and descended on Yin Nuashing's head. Strands of fiery red energy surged out and suppressed the rampaging energy in Yin Nuashing's body. At this moment, the Netherworld Ruins sword shot out a few purplish-black energy chains and bound Yin Nuashing's body. Then, everyone saw waves of 8-colored energy surge out of Yin Nuashing's body and enter the Netherworld Ruins, soared through the chains. After absorbing the overflowing energy, the Netherworld Ruins sword couldn't help but touch Yin Nuashing. A faint ripple passed into his heart, as if it was blaming him. Yin Nuashing laughed embarrassedly and continued to concentrate on releasing the energy. Another 10 days passed, and the energy in the array had dropped to an extremely low level. The red light that surrounded the array had already dimmed, and only a flickering array was left. Even the heaven and earth energy within a 5-kilometer radius had almost dried up. The elders in the hall were a little dumbfounded. They didn't think that unsealing the array would consume so much energy. This guy is assimilating the energy in the environment. At this moment, the sect leader was also startled awake by this situation. When he saw this scene, his eyes widened in shock, and the book in his hand fell to the ground with a thud. In that instant, all the meridians in Yin Nuashing's body flashed with a golden light. However, it quickly disappeared. It was so fast that no one could see it clearly, and they thought that it was an illusion. The sect leader's eyes widened, and his mouth hung open for a long time. He blinked hard, shook his head, and widened his eyes again to look at Yin Nuashing. However, the golden light had already disappeared. Did I see wrongly? The sect leader picked up the book and muttered to himself. Then, he hurriedly disappeared, leaving behind a confused crowd. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.